All right, we're going to start off with fuck you all, because that's what Independent Man said to do.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to be original, don't we? Tell people to go fuck themselves.
Guess welcome to the stream if anybody's here watching yet. Really new at hosting a live stream, so I'll probably have a lot of ums and ers. Usually I do this with Failure Accomplished, and he's a lot better of a host than I am, probably.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. If there's no one in the chat, it don't matter. I'm just going to tell the chat to go fuck themselves. And oh, I almost mistyped that. Yeah, Australia time is correct. I retweeted what I think. I was fucking up all night doing that Target video, and I was going to do a promo video, but the thing about Aussies is Saturday morning, half of them would be in sleep hungover, and the other half might be working or shopping or something. So,
indeed, yeah, I got all messed up because I'm actually Central Time, but it seems like a lot of the television adverts here are always saying that what the Eastern Time was. So I thought for sake of ease that would make sense, but then when I said the time, I'm like, oh, I went an hour the wrong direction because they'd be an hour ahead and not an hour behind.
Yeah. So here we are on fucking YouTube live stream, and the topic that everybody wants to talk about is YouTube demonetization.
Indeed, it is quite a interesting thing that's been happening to some of the YouTubers. I haven't had it happen to any of my videos yet, fortunately, but it seems like some of the bigger channels have gotten hit with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it has happened to me. Not recently, but it's happened to me in the past. Maybe the last time was about a month ago. Oh, no, it's actually a little bit, about 2 weeks ago, actually. And then before that, it's happened a couple of times. And I don't know if you saw my video with Dave Cullen, where I just chopped up his voice and then I made an animated, like I interviewed him. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't see that one.
So I just made, it's like, shit, it wouldn't even be, it'd be 4.5 minutes long, and it's just animated. So what I did, I went to a shitload of Dave's videos, cut them up, cut his voice up, put them in a file, and then I sort of just wrote a dialogue between us and just inserted his voice saying stuff, right? So I've got him saying like, fuck you, and a few expletives like that. But I mean, it's all animated and it's all, done in humor. That one got demonetized about 2 weeks ago, even though it had already been up for maybe, I think I put that up at the beginning of August. So it had been going for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then it got demonetized. And it's bizarre because the title, it wouldn't have been the title, because the title is something like Dave Cullen Raw and Uncut. That's all it is. And there's a few expletives in the interview. But this is one of the questions I have. I mean, how do they know, unless they watch your video, can they pick up swear words in a video? I mean, can they do that now?
There's got to be some kind of algorithm that does that. That would be the only thing that would make sense, because they certainly can't watch all the videos. I mean, I know they have it for the like third-party content and stuff like that. So I did a video for Suit Yourself when he had a special snowflake that flagged one of his videos for making fun of him. And I put a clip in there from Star Trek. Now it was like 11 or 12-minute video, but they took away the monetization because I used like a 45-second or like a minute-long clip of like a Captain Picard speech.
Yeah. So that's copyright, right? That one.
Yeah. So they didn't make me take it down, but they claimed it as like a third-party content. So whoever owns the right to it gets to have all the monetization from the views for the video. When they only had like a minute of the like a 10 or 11-minute video.
Oh, it's fucking insane. I mean, I did a little video a while back on Brexit. Again, that was just a little animated clip, and then over the top, I put "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." That the part in that song that says So I chose freedom, and like literally, yeah, it wouldn't have been more than 40 seconds of music over the top. Boom. Got, copyright, not a strike, but yeah, same thing as you. This has been flagged, and all the revenue will go to. It's like, fucking hell, this whole thing is my creation. Animation. It took me fucking 5 seconds to upload 40 seconds of your shitty song. That's how old? I don't know, 40 years old, 50 years old. And you're going to take all the money? Fuck you.
Yeah, it's like who you're stealing from. All that's doing is putting money in the rights of some kind of a publishing company that just so happens to be the rights holder of it at that point in time. And
Yeah.
it's obviously what you're doing is transformative because it doesn't make the entirety of the video. So how they can claim that somehow entitles them to all of the ad revenue for the view on your video, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it would be a different thing if I labeled the video "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," and people went there because they were looking for the song, as people do on YouTube. Maybe they'd have a claim, but yeah, I mean, literally, if in your case, right, so a 12-minute video, 45 seconds, well, maybe they should get 1/15 of the revenue from your video, but that's it.
Yeah, that would at least be fair, but to take it all though, that's seems kind of greedy.
It's very greedy. I mean, they should be lucky to get anything. But I wonder, see, this is what interests me about, and I'm sorry to jump all over the place here, but with respect to minds, now, if you listen to Dave Cullen, he's sort of saying, look, this is going to be open and free, and the guy's committed to free speech. But you can be committed to free speech all you like, but there has to be some kind of copyright system, right? Otherwise, that guy's going to be in fucking court every other week defending himself.
Yeah, right. And especially with the litigious society that we live in, everybody's looking to extract every dollar they can via the legal system. So, you certainly can't put yourself in a position to having to be spending all your resources fighting those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. So he's got to have some kind of system like that. I mean, it just, what bothers me is I mean, fair use, you would think would have, like, again, take your video, you would think it would be covered. I mean, you've got 45 seconds in a 12-minute video. It's clearly used for a specific purpose. You're not just reproducing it to say, hey, look, here's a Star Trek clip. How does that not fall under fair use?
And if anything, I'm a very free market kind of guy, and the way I look at it is I wasn't using their product to generate revenue for myself, but using it to add to a point in the video, because the monologue that Picard was doing was very relevant to the free speech subject in the video at hand. So my thing is, if anything, I'm not profiting off of what they're doing, but if I'm actually bringing attention to Star Trek, so maybe if some people in the younger audience maybe had never watched that particular episode of Star Trek before, they might hear that and go, oh, wow, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe I should go check that out. So if anything, I might be even aiding them in gaining more views to their show. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I don't get. I did a video maybe a month ago now called Progressive Islamic Schools in Australia. Now, this was an article about how an Islamic school had been asked basically, how do you deal with gay students? They said, oh, we've never had a gay student, which, it's impossible, just given the demographics of, what we know about what percentage of the population is gay. They must have at least a few gay students right now, and would have had even more during the years. And of course, there's no way that that would be a particularly comfortable environment for gay kids in an Islamic school. And I included in that clip a pretty well-known documentary of Richard Dawkins, where he went into an Islamic school. He goes into a Jewish school. He goes into faith schools, basically. And in that clip, he's sitting with a little group, about half a dozen girls, and they're just spewing basically the creation myth, because they have their own, which is not much different to the Bible's, which is where they fucking stole it from in the first place. But yeah, and they're just regurgitating this bullshit. Anyway, I've got, again, less than a minute of that. And Channel 4 in the UK have blocked that video in the UK and some surrounding fucking islands in the UK. It's like, again, people come on there and they go, oh, where's this documentary from? It's like, I'm doing you a fucking favor. People are going to be alerted to your content. You know, it's strange to me. Like it's just free advertising for you.
They're always so worried about like a bad reputation centered around content. But okay, well, if the content has views and people are able to see the ad revenue, then I don't see what the problem is. Whether it be G-rated content or R-rated content that's associated with the advertising. I mean, isn't there a little bit there for everybody? I mean, it would seem that some of the advertisers themselves engage in some awfully risque advertisements in and of themselves. So I kind of find it hard to believe that certain subjects or just some swear words would be enough to I guess have to disassociate with a product with a particular channel. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, isn't this is interesting, isn't it? Because I have a load of questions and no answers on this. So, just think about TV, right? The way they do that. So advertisers on TV, they'll generally bid based on prime time, right? And segments. So they know kids are watching at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because they just got home at school, right? They know pretty much 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. You're going to reach a pretty broad audience with your advertisements. It's going to cost you more to put them on at night. You're going to put different types of commercials on during the NFL, right? Now, but on YouTube, because there's such a unbelievably, I hate using the word diverse, but diverse community of just all kinds of shit, right? There's no way an advertiser can know the demographic of what he's pitching at, really, right? So advertisers are obviously leaving this choice up to, do you think? I mean, am I wrong here?
Oh, I think I mean, I'm sure there's ways with the analytics. I mean, the advertisers could choose how they would like to be targeted, but it seems like maybe YouTube doesn't want to put forth that effort. But like, I can look at my analytics and see that I'm popular mostly with males that are between, about 18 and about 40 years old. So, and then if you say like that they have some kind of algorithm that picks up like, say, swearing, it's like, okay, well then you don't put the Christian dating site advertisement on my videos. Maybe you put the Deadpool advertisement on my video instead, because that's not going to harm anything. It's not going to make anybody think bad about Deadpool. In fact, probably the people that swear and talk about some of these subjects might like to see Deadpool.
Exactly. But see, this is what you don't know. I mean, they came out and said that, oh, we haven't changed anything. We're just trying to be more transparent. Well, you're not fucking transparent. I mean, how does this work? I mean, are you dictating on behalf of advertisers? Are advertisers really, as you say, are they choosing their target audiences? I mean, they can, but are they? I mean, can they be fucked? Because there's so many different target audiences on YouTube. It's not like a TV station. It's much more diverse. So how are they doing it?
It's a lot more unregulated.
And like you say, I think what was interesting, I have an article here where Philip DeFranco tweeted out, you could see this on Twitter if you go to his account, where he said, I'm confused because my content isn't ad friendly. But you remember that Syrian boy who was covered in his own blood? Remember this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So CNN, there's ads on that. The CNN story. So it's okay for CNN. So it does make you suspicious. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't like that kind of shit. But it makes you suspicious. Like, so do networks get a pass because they're networks, and we don't get a pass because we're not, proper journalists, for want of a better term? I mean, what is the criteria here?
Maybe it's a lack of a filtering process, because maybe they feel that with, say, something like a network, they know all the programs are going to go through a certain process. So there's going to be executives and producers and developers that are going to see these things before they typically will get to the date of air. I mean, I guess maybe not so much with the news program. But I don't know. I guess they get a pass because they're already have the built-in credibility as journalists. Where since we're all independent people, we don't get that. I guess we don't get to be considered journalists. I guess so. We don't get that same latitude. I mean, it still seems like quite a double standard, because I mean, half the time the major news media networks they leave stuff out anyway, like they did with the sister of that the guy that was killed in the Milwaukee riot thing or whatever, where they quote mined her and stuff. So I don't see why they get the pass for being credible any more than an independent person claiming to be a news source would get.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the regulations, controversial issues. I mean, that's our entire fucking community. I mean, if we can't talk about controversial issues, it's over. I mean, we're done. But again, like they even said, for example, that just talking about war is, and even if you don't show any images associated with it, just talking about it could be enough to get demonetized. I mean, channels obviously do show war. I mean, they show graphic images. What's more, I could talk about it in a horrible way, but I think the image speaks, much louder than my words could. So it like you said, maybe they have this cachet because CNN, for example, is a registered news network, and they have their own internal practices and policies, and you're not going to hear any swearing on CNN. But and so that takes care of the swearing, but there's all those other categories: potentially offensive, it's controversial topic, all the rest of it.
And the silly thing about it is, though, is it's an impossible standard, because anytime you get more than one person in a room, as soon as you add a second person, there's a potential for controversy, because no two people are ever going to agree on 100% the same things. So all it is just a blanket cop-out to be able to justify any kind of arbitrary decisions they want to make on it. And I think that's where most of us get upset about it, because it's like, now we don't know specifically what it is. Well, what is a controversial topic, and who's deciding what is a controversial topic?
Yeah. Some fucking SJW in a room. I just find this all. You could eliminate this all. I mean, apparently there's a huge room with people who just go through flagged videos and shit. Like, why are you wasting your money on this? You don't need anybody for this. If you just had a free speech platform where anything goes, you could save yourself a shit ton of money and just fire all these people. You don't need this policing. I mean, what do you need to police other than probably kiddie porn? I mean, what else is there? I mean, probably graphic violence, like people having their head chopped off. But shit, I'd still watch that, to be honest. I mean, there's a few things, but other than that, you've just set up this Orwellian system where you've how many people have got? Hundreds, thousands, combing through fucking videos. Now, I know they're trying to do it based on some sort of algorithm, but at the end of the day, people have to comb through these claims when they get contested.
And that's what makes it so bad for the smaller content creators is then when they do get contested, then the little guys, it's a long time before they get to your part of the process, even with the staff that they have. Yeah,
and that's another sort of brings up another question, because that's all I fucking have about these is questions. You've seen, for example, Dave Cullen just got flagged for a few. Now, Dave has he belongs to one of those organizations that does all that for him, right? But he's got hit. DeFranco got hit, who's got a huge channel. Who else? I can't remember. There's a couple, but why has this happened all of a sudden? And is it all of a sudden, or is it been ongoing? I don't know. And is it the fact that we don't get hit because we're so small? Because I have 2 videos out there now with Milwaukee in the title, and it's pretty obvious what that's about, but they didn't get flagged.
Yeah, that's interesting. like I said, that's just what bothers me about it is the arbitrariness of it. It's like who's being the arbiter of what is or isn't controversial or offensive. So how do I know based on the content before I make it? I mean, this is a hobby for a lot of us. I mean, obviously we're not all full-time YouTubers, but for people that don't do this kind of thing, it takes a considerable amount of work and effort to make a video. So my things are monetized only because, I mean, I've got probably $1,200 or so wrapped up in a computer and equipment for this quote unquote hobby. And I'm just trying to recoup a little bit of it because I put a lot of time into it. I mean, it's fun to express your opinion, but I mean, I don't know how it is for you. You do the animation, so I would almost have to imagine maybe even longer, but I could easily spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, depending on what I'm planning on doing to make a video. And that's a significant amount of your free time when you have so very little free time to spend making a video. It's like, why are they trying to be so prohibitive in people just getting a little bit back on their hard work and efforts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, fuck, I have Premiere Pro, so and Photoshop, that costs money. I got myself a new computer. You got your microphone. I pay for this animation program I use. And like you say, if I could recoup that would be nice. If I got some more, great. But I the last few days I've been waking up and just going to the video manager just to check that everything's still fucking monetized. Just to see, because I'm waiting for it any second. Like I said, I've got Black Lives Matter videos. I've got videos on the Milwaukee shooting. I've got videos on what's been happening in Australia with Aboriginals, obviously a controversial subject. I've got videos about Islam. I mean, shit, if someone wanted to go through my, 55 videos or something I've done, there'd probably only be about 5 fucking left that weren't controversial.
Yeah, and even though I don't swear much in my videos, I mean, certainly a good number of mine have been reasonably controversial. One thing that happened weird with mine with monetization is I did a video disagreeing with Justin Dennis, talking about what we're told about rape survivors, and when that video got its first 1,000 or 1,200 views, the video was demonetized, I guess, because I was talking about rape, and then it magically became remonetized well after it had reached its peak views, which was weird as shit too.
I've had that. It's been taken down, and then so I don't know if that means that someone's flagged it and then they've investigated the flag and then they've taken it off. I don't know. You just, why aren't you even emailed about that? And I know that's what they've now done. That's what they say they've done. All they've done is because they never used to even tell you when it was demonetized. Now they send you an email. Well, thanks a lot. They're not really. You still don't know exactly why. But just on that point, that one where you were talking about rape survivors, did you have the word rape in the title at all?
Yeah, I think I did, because I think I titled it "Disagreement with Justin Dennis's Lies Were Told About Rape Survivors."
Yeah. So that's you watched the Chris Raygun video about this, where he's getting pretty worked up about it. Now Go
ahead.
Oh, sorry. He had mentioned that prior to this, he was very careful about the way he names his videos, and I have been too, because I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've uploaded a video and it's already been demonetized even before it finished uploading, because either something in your title or something in your description or something, one of the tags you may have put in. So, for example, I think I got one flagged before it went up because it was about black people being shot in the United States. And I had something about black shootings. I think that was in my title, something like that. And it got flagged straight away before it was even published. So I hit it to private, then changed the title and re-uploaded it, and then it was fine. But of course, the problem with that is if you're trying to get seen in Google search results and you have to change your title so much that your title doesn't actually resemble what your video is about, then you're kind of fucking yourself in Google search results. you're not going to get found because you don't have the right tags, you don't have the right title. So it works against itself. So we've already been, I guess is a long way of saying, we've already been kind of self-censoring in this way anyway by being careful about how we word our titles.
And that's really a place we don't want to be, is having to worry that much about self-censorship. And that's a pretty sad place to have to be, that you can't just be honest about the topic, because even the topic itself is enough to, take away, monetization again for your hard work. And, I think everybody probably watching the stream right now is a YouTuber, from what I can tell in the chat. But I mean, for those that aren't, though, it's like I said, it takes an awful lot of work and effort to do this. So, it's not about trying to get rich off of it, because believe me, most of us are not. But it, just to be able to recoup a little bit for what it takes to buy the software and the equipment to make this happen. And then, to have to walk on eggshells, and then now to have this, arbitrarily happening to people and not even being able to know. So I think Repsion did a video on it too. And one of the things he said, it was talking about like a video where he was talking about a depression or something. It wasn't even anything to do with suicide. It was just basically, about things you can do to try to better yourself from that situation. It got demonetized. How is that controversial or in any way? I don't think that's very fair at all.
Well, someone got a video taken down that was about acne. Now, I didn't see it, but I assume it was like, probably directed at teenage kids and say, hey, you got acne, maybe you can try this. You know what? Because some fucking poor snowflake is going to get, go out and start self-harming because, they've got acne. I mean, it's insane. I mean, and it's arbitrary, because if you, and this is the way our society's going, if we're going to regulate, make laws around based on subjective feelings of offense, then there are no rules, because it's just subject to whatever special snowflake finds offensive at the time.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I mean, you always get attacked when you say this, because nothing's really ever an absolute, but I'm kind of an absolute free speech guy, when it doesn't cause harm to anybody. Obviously can't yell fire into a theater, but I think the whole concept of being offended is bullshit. I mean, for me personally, I was somebody that was bullied a lot in school because I was like a really small kid, and I learned to develop quite a bit of a thick skin. And there's a lot that can be said to me before I'll ever get upset. And most of the time, you have to physically interact with me in some way before I'll get too wound up. But it's just, I kind of derailed on what the point I was trying to make here. But it's just, it's really easy to take something somebody says and let yourself get worked up. And I think it was a John Lennon quote. He said something about, once they get you angry, then they know how to treat you, because once you're violent, then they got you right where they want you. And I feel it's the same way with being offended. When you go around being perpetually offended, it makes it easy for people that would use that against you to try to get you wound up. To take you places that maybe normally intelligent people wouldn't go there if they didn't allow their emotions to kind of to rule how they're interpreting information coming to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone just put in the chat there, I hate to say it, just posted a video about it, but I'm thinking it isn't over censorship. Now, this is the thing that I have a little bit of a problem with if we want to call this our community, is that I don't buy that this is necessarily a conspiracy against people who have, say, conservative opinions, because Blair White actually tweeted this out, and she said, look, people are getting hit everywhere. It's not just conservative opinions. It's people, like I said, doing videos about acne, makeup tutorial shit. So I don't think, I know Milo put this thought in a lot of people's heads about, social media is trying to clamp down on conservative opinions. I think it's more to do with not so much conservatives. It's just that conservatives happen to talk about this stuff more. Anything that could potentially be triggering. I mean, these social media platforms are kind of mirroring a sort of a university campus, aren't they?
Oh, very much
in the United States at the moment. So it's not so much, maybe I'm just naive, but I don't think they're targeting conservatives. What they're doing is they're just trying to make everything a fucking safe space. because of these pathetic snowflakes think they should be insulated from opinions they don't agree with. And it just so happens that conservative opinions are the ones that they don't agree with most of the time. But you will see, as has happened, you know, the old saying is the left eats its own. These repercussions are going to come back on them as well, because they're going to find some of their own shit is censored for just innocuous reasons. There's already some examples of that. In Great Britain, for example, when all these came out and decided to ban all types of porn, lesbian porn got banned. And so the lesbians were up in arms, you know, just a classic backfire. But yeah, so I think I don't buy this as we're trying to get rid of conservatives. It's just that people who have more conservative opinions that want to question the status quo are just going to be in the firing line more. And it's more to do with a generation of people who actually believe they're allowed to go through life or should be entitled to go through life without hearing a contrary opinion.
And that's just it. It gets overused almost to the point of being cliched, but it's you know, it's a very Orwellian type of thing to try to do. I mean, they're basically trying to create their own version of newspeak and censorship, so that way, you know, there's a collective idea of what's offensive or not. And you know, I think in you know, to what you were talking about, you know, it's not a left versus right thing. To me, it's more of a authoritarian versus libertarian kind of thing, because there's libertarian left and libertarian right. And I think it's a lot more to do with you know, how permissive you are as a society, because you know, you see this with conservatives a little bit too, you know, where they would want to say like ban drugs or porn because that's within their own interests, but you know, they'll also talk about some of the same controversial things that that would bother some of these people that want to try to control you know, what causes offense and things like that. And I believe it was Stephen Fry that had that really eloquent quote about, you know, it's like, well, if you're offended, like, well, so fucking what? It's like, it's not for me to have to worry about what you find offensive. There's an infinite amount of different varied opinions, and it would be impossible for me to go around all day worried about what particular word or phrase is going to trigger you.
Think about the amount of the amount of arrogance it takes to make a blanket statement about something. And maybe we can lead into this stupid Target t-shirt that I did a video on. Just for you to come out and say, that's offensive. And then I need some kind of reparation in some way. I need an apology. I need something to be done about it, because I personally am offended without the slightest bit of reflective capacity to say, perhaps me being offended does not mean everybody else is offended. Perhaps it means perhaps I'm a little oversensitive on this. Perhaps I might want to rethink my position. No, I'm offended. Therefore, something needs to happen to make this better. And I just have to think, some parents did some really fucking bad job on their kids for people to have that attitude. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, at least the way I was raised, you know, if there was something I didn't like, it's just you avoided it, or you didn't look at it. You know, it's like, you don't like the show, change the channel. And it's I find it the same way with something like that t-shirt. When you sent me the link and I checked out your video on it, I was just amazed. I was like, they took something completely innocuous and decided to run, you know, a mile with it. And basically all the shirt was saying was that, okay, you know, in responsibilities in life, even if you're a superhero, sometimes you got to do the dry cleaning and wash the car. And, you know, people decided to be offended by that. It's like, well, don't we all have chores to do? It's like, what are you trying to get at with this? It's just, I mean, just you really gotta question yourself when you wake up in the morning and you see a t-shirt like that, and that's what sends you into an absolute meltdown that you have to take it to social media to bitch about it.
Yeah. Do you mind if I try sharing the screen here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I can see. think I
Let me do that.
See, now we're trying technology. This is where I don't know how to do anything.
I think I can do it myself.
Oh, okay.
What do you see now on the on the screen? Nothing.
I see our bubbles still, our avatars.
Okay, let me just try the share screen. Share, and then anything? Got anything?
Oh, there we go. I had to click on you. Now I got it.
Yeah. All right. So that's. Oh, let's see if we can get that bigger. Oh, there it is. There. Can you guys let me blow that shit up? So this is the offending article. Batgirl to-do list. Now this is aimed at 2 7-year-old girls, and it's pink. So straight off the bat here, it's all wrong, isn't it? It's all fucked up because it's pink and it's aimed at girls. So that's a stereotype. But dry clean cape, wash Batmobile, fight crime, save the world. Now, as someone pointed out in the Facebook comments that, you know, why isn't this, we should be saying, look at how good this kid is. She can multitask and do all these things. So the thing that so a few of the emotional infants got all shitty about was obviously the dry cleaning of the cape and the wash Batmobile. This was seen as demeaning, that a little girl would have to dry clean the cape and wash the Batmobile before she went out to save the world. Now, I don't know how you guys do it in the States, but dry cleaning to me has always been, you take the fucking thing down to the dry cleaners, you hand it over, and you come back and pick it up. There's no work involved, unless you're talking about dropping it off. And then wash your shitty car. I mean, it's stunning to me, the idea that you know, you wouldn't do a couple of chores, like that you don't, what, you're a crime fighter, so you don't have to clean up after yourself. Is that what we're saying now? Girls don't have to clean up after themselves? I don't know. Bizarre how you could spaz out about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like they that they put you know, not that I would even think this is offensive, because we all have to cook meals and things too, but it's not like it says clean the bathroom, cook dinner, wash the dishes. I mean, it's okay, you're a superhero, so you have a cape, you want to look good, right? So you're going to go get the cape dry clean. You're a superhero, right? So you have a fancy cool superhero car you drive around in, so you want to wash that shit so it's not dirty when you go fighting crime. I mean, I thought it was kind of witty and clever myself when I first saw it. I was like, for fuck's sake.
And I mean, don't you teach your kids, like I was taught, like, okay, you can watch TV, but you got to do the washing up first. You got to do your homework first. You know, to teach kids that there's, you know, reward comes from effort and doing a bit of work, taking some responsibility, that you don't just get to lounge around and do whatever you want all the time. You have to teach, you know, whether it's make your bed, do your homework, take out the trash, whatever. I mean, this is something you should instill in kids, unless you want them to grow up to be assholes.
Or not very good housekeepers. I've been to a few people's houses that I question if they ever learned those skills.
Yeah. And I bet the kids don't have Batgirl shirts either. Yeah, just fucking sad. But here's let's if I can just. This is a recent article that came out yesterday. This is one of Australia's biggest papers. Can you see the screen?
Let's see. I'm still seeing a sexist Batgirl shirt.
Yeah, this one says.
Oh,
let me.
Okay, yeah, it's a different one. It's got the social media comments on it.
So yeah, Target inundated with social media requests to bring back sexist Batgirl shirts. So yeah, they've been inundated with media requests to bring the Batgirl T-shirt back. So I bet there's someone that, you know, there's a lot of people sitting at Target headquarters going, oh fuck, you know, because they create their own shitstorm here. They listen to a couple of emotional weaklings cry about it, and then you know, they react, and you know, let's face it, large corporations, they're cowards. They don't have any ethics or morals. They're just about protecting their bottom line. They want a virtue signal. Look at us. I mean, these dickheads back in, so I'm talking about Target Australia here, just so if Americans listening don't get that confused. Target Australia banned GTA 5, the game, in December 2014. Now, that at the time was the biggest selling game ever. And they fucked themselves out of obviously some revenue there by taking this stupid moral stand, which was based all around, you know, that stupid Sarkeesian video where she claimed that, you know, it promoted violence against women because there was a scene in there where you know, you could, you know, in GTA 5, you can basically fucking kill anyone. Just pull up in your car and beat the shit out of a pedestrian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no more killing of women than there is killing of men. But we don't give a fuck when it's involved. It's only a problem if a woman is getting hurt, right? That's how it works.
Oh, that's the thing too, and I know like multiple YouTubers have brought this up. But you know, whenever they talk about violence against women and all that stuff in movies or games, and it's like they completely ignore the literally millions of men that have been killed in movies and games and TV shows. But whenever it's you know, it's one woman, then it's an outrage.
Yeah, it's stunning, absolutely stunning. I mean, the whole domestic violence narrative is just stunning. The whole idea that women are victims. I mean, if you look at any stats, doesn't matter what country you're talking about, you know, men are more likely to be victims of violent assault. Doesn't matter what Western country you go to, men are more likely to be assaulted physically. Women are more likely to be raped, yeah, sure, outside of a prison, but men are more likely to be assaulted. No doubt about it. But we, you know, the constant narrative is that we have to protect the poor women's, to the point where they equate telling someone you suck online is equivalent to physical violence. This is how they want to run with it now. They talk about online violence. It's insane. The bastardization. Yeah.
I'd be assaulted almost every day if that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's how you deal with it, isn't it? I mean, you can't help as your YouTube channel grows and you attract more views and you're talking about controversial things. You get people who come on, and it doesn't matter what you do a video on, they're going to say, you suck, you shit, you don't know what you're talking about, you're an idiot. You know, like I put out that video last night. Now it's 10 minutes long. Now, someone thumbed it down within the first like minute that it was up. Right.
I was like, I didn't even watch it.
It's like so fucking, how are these sad people? They hate you so much that they wait. They must be subscribed to you, right? Or something. They get an alert that you've put out a new video and they rush over straight away and thumb it down. What kind of existence are you living that you have to do that? It's sad.
It really is. That's about the most I ever do with anybody that makes negative comments, because you know, like I said, I was kind of messed with a lot in school. So my last feeling was killed in the insult of 1993, a long time ago. But I always like to turn it back around on them. Sometimes it's like, what are you doing here? It's like what's going on in your life that this is really how you feel a need to spend your time. It's like, I don't care that you're calling me a fag or calling me a hipster or whatever people like to call me. It's just like I'm just genuinely curious. It's more of a human curiosity for me. It's like, why do you feel a need to do this exactly? Like, what do you get out of it exactly? I just don't have that kind of time. I barely have time to watch the videos I like to watch than to watch a video I don't like and to spend time telling somebody how much I think they suck.
Yeah, well, exactly. I've occasionally left a video on, like, if I give a shit about someone, like I think, oh, this is a decent channel, but maybe their mic is fucked, and you leave a comment and say, hey dude, maybe you want to get yourself a new mic, and it'll sound a lot clearer, something like that, something that's actually helpful. And if it's someone I don't like, I just won't leave a comment at all usually. But this whole I don't think I've ever used the word fag as something like to a gay person. I mean, I grew up, I was in high school through the 80s, early 90s. That was my high school. And fag meant, you know, if you threw the ball and it was a bad throw, you fag, you know, like you did something weak, lame, you were a fag. No one even really associated. I mean, we knew where it came from, but that's not the way it was used. And so this banter, if someone calls me a fag online, it's like, yeah, okay, so that's like the 10,000th time I've been called a fag in my life. I'm going to get upset by that. But in this day and age, I think young kids, 18, 19, 20, these millennials, some of them are going to get upset because they've been told for a start that these words can really, really hurt people, right? And that it's, you know, the equivalent to violence. So they actually do get upset by this, and they do use it, unlike people like myself who were brought up using it as banter, as ribbing of your mates. These people are using it as abuse, and they think it's abuse. But for people like us, it's like, yeah, so you called me a fag. Well done. You know, mission accomplished.
Yeah, for me, it's I was in high school in the mid and late '90s, so I'm just a little bit younger than you, but I grew up in a very racially diverse city, and I didn't even really know what political correctness was, or until they taught it to us in middle school, because we didn't have those kind of cliques really, you know, like all the kids played with all the kids. And then they kind of taught it to us in that way, and that's when you first start. Geez, I totally derailed on this. I shouldn't have looked down at my note. Geez, what you were just saying a second ago just put me down this path. But
oh yeah, about at school and how you were taught political correctness in the
about the words that you say to each other. So since they started teaching us that stuff in middle school, I kind of grew up in that time where you didn't really call people gay or fag unless you were really trying to hurt them with those words, because they were kind of those words that were put off limits. So even now as an adult, I find myself that you know, I have gay friends and stuff, and when I had lived out of this area for a while, I had a gay friend come and visit. I'm taking him around the town I live in, and it was a lot smaller town, and he asked me straight up, he goes, where do you keep the fags? I'm like, where do we keep the fags? You know, it kind of took me off guard that a gay man would ask me that question, because, you know, I grew up, you know, during that time when they taught us, you know, don't say these words because these are really hurtful words to people. But then you find out, you know, that that it's not a big deal when they're used in the proper context, when you're not, you know, trying to injure somebody with those words. And I think some people don't like to make that distinction. Just the utterance of the word alone for them is enough to fly off the handle. It's not always about how you use it. So, you know, as a result, even still today, I have a hard time. I don't typically ever call somebody gay or a fag. Cunt is one that I've only started using recently because of my Australian friends now. Thank you. But
I think about that one. I mean, I have not used, as you can tell, I swear a bit, but I don't use that very often. And I think some people, because of the amount of Australians on YouTube, think that Australians use that word almost just as in casual conversation, as a greeting, as a term of endearment. And I can tell you, it's far from that in Australia. There are a group of guys, you know, you might use that word kind of, hey cunt, what are you up to? You know, that happens. But let me tell you, I mean, if my mother would absolutely freak if I said it in front of her, and my dad would be fine. We're out playing golf or something, and I said it. But if I said it in front of my mother, because, you know, that's the generation they come from, which is you don't talk like that in front of your mother, you know, for some reason, which I always thought was strange, because I thought, well, why is it okay to say it in front of you? Maybe we shouldn't say it at all. Or maybe mum should harden the fuck up. I don't know which one that is, but, you know, but yeah, it's just, it's not as, I don't think it's as used as much as some people might think it is here in Australia. Definitely not something you just sling around the office with gay abandon. I can tell you that.
Well, that's definitely good to know. Yeah, for me, like my parents swore a lot when I was growing up, so I definitely distinctly remember, at least not in their presence, being as young as, like maybe 9 and 10 years old, and swearing quite a bit. So, contrary to my YouTube persona, I actually swear like pretty much incessantly when I'm not doing videos. But like I could
Yeah.
get away with dropping an F-bomb around my mom, but if I said cunt around her, I'm pretty sure she would slap me even now, and I'm about to be 36. So
So yeah, that's I think that's pretty normal. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I'll let fly on here. I don't swear that much in my videos either, because I kind of take the route of comedians, which is to say that, if you have to use a swear word to get a laugh, then it could become a crutch, right? It'd be something you fall back on. And if you can express yourself without, I'm not saying I'm a comedian, and I'm not trying to get laughs, but if I can get my message across without having to resort to that, then I think that's probably better. I'm not averse to swearing. It's just, I think you can go about it and sound more intelligent, and perhaps get your message to more people if you can do it that way without just swearing all the time, every second word.
yeah, and definitely my personal life, I'm really bad about that. I don't know so much that I use it as a crutch. It just maybe because in terms of my employment, I'm on stage, quote unquote, all the time. So you really got to watch what you say.
Mm.
So I guess when I'm
Right.
not in front of an audience where I got to watch myself, then I make up for it.
Right. Yeah. 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 Maybe that's it. You bottle it up. Yeah.
I mean, there's better ways I could
Yeah.
speak for sure, but I don't know. I grew up listening. I was very influenced by a lot of stand-up comedy, and George Carlin and Dennis Leary in particular were two of my favorite comedians, and both of them F-bombs almost every other word. So it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I grew up listening to the same. The first ever comedian I ever saw was an old Buddy Hackett uh, video. This is
Oh
when
wow.
VCRs were the thing. And like he swore like nothing else. I saw that I was about fucking 8 years old, I think. It's like the early 80s. Um, yeah, shit. But then I'll tell you what else I saw. The second stand-up comedy I saw was Bill Cosby himself. Now, if people haven't seen Bill Cosby himself, try to put out of your mind all the fucking negative things said about him. That is, and widely recognized by most comedians, one of the best stand-up, I think it's 2 hours, you will ever see in your life. And the guy doesn't, I think he says asshole once. And it's absolute brilliance. I mean, that is a masterclass in stand-up comedy. And the guy swears about twice, I think, in the whole fucking thing in about 2 hours. Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't think I'm trying to remember if I've actually watched that. I know the most I know about Bill Cosby's stand-up because yeah, I grew up watching the Cosby Show and stuff like that. But his stand-up comedy, my grandfather one time had some old vinyls of Bill Cosby's stand-up, but I don't know what the names of the albums were. But it was really good stuff though, and I was really impressed that he was able to do what he did without swearing. Because that's especially
Yeah.
I've gotten a little bit into Richard Pryor. I like Ralphie May a lot. Jim Jeffries is one that I've gotten to like a lot in the last few years, and all those guys. It's pretty much I guess the comic is pretty much the common thing within stand up these days. But God, there's just so much good stuff out there though.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Jesus, thank Christ they do it, because in this day and age you need it more than ever. Did you see that? I saw this on Adam Carolla. I think that there's a new movie coming out. It's like a documentary, and it's a bunch of comedians talking about free speech and how important it is.
No, I
It
haven't seen
looks
that.
pretty interesting. Yeah, looks pretty good. I think if you just, how did I see it? Maybe I subscribe to, or I follow Adam Carolla or something. I'm not sure, but it's pretty interesting. It's about a minute long. It's a bunch of comedians talking about why free speech is so important, why it's important to be able to offend people. It's just stunning to me in this day and age that we need to be taught why. I mean, it's such a problem with people who have no historical context, why wars have been fought, why, you know, why we have free speech laws in the first place. Free speech laws are not there to protect opinions that everybody agrees with. They're there precisely to protect you when you say things that are controversial. No one needs free speech laws to protect things that everybody agrees with. You know, my favorite color is blue is not a controversial topic that needs free speech protection. But saying you don't agree with gay marriage or something, that's the kind of thing that is vital, that is protected. Even if you think, what is it the saying that Noam Chomsky said? If you don't believe in free speech for those that you despise, then you don't believe in it at all.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the key takeaway.
That's absolutely correct. I had a quite a major shift in political ideology, kind of after the '08 elections here, the one with Obama and McCain. And after what came out of that is for I kind of don't follow any political parties here anymore because they're both fucked. But at the point in time, a politician here, Ron Paul, was somebody who had a lot of influence with me, and he had a whole thing where he was talking about, he's like, you know, free speech doesn't exist so we can sit around and talk about the weather. It's so we can discuss controversial things. And
Exactly.
you know, when you start encroaching upon that, then you know, you make it impossible to really have the difficult discussions that are necessary to be able to do the things that we do, you know, as individuals, to interact with each other, to form our opinions.
And there's a guy who, when did he run? Did he run 2000, 2004?
Which one?
Ron Paul.
Oh, he ran
a
in
couple of
08,
times, right?
08 and 12. He ran.
Oh, 08 and 12. Fuck. So, okay. So he was in the running for the nomination against McCain. But, well, he wasn't really, because they fucking sidelined him, didn't they? Because I was saying through that whole thing, at the time I worked in a university and in an English department, which would have been maybe 50% American. There was about 50 of us and maybe 25 Americans. And I was always up them and saying, Ron Paul, you got to like it. And a few of the people there liked him, but they were all sort of smitten with the fucking community organizer Obama for some reason. But, you know, virtue signaling at its finest there for a lot of people, I think. Oh, he's black. It's like the same thing, you know, well, now we've got to vote for Hillary because she's a woman. No, you don't. You don't vote for people because they're black or they're a woman. You vote for them because they've got decent ideas. But Ron Paul, it's such a tragedy that guy never got more traction.
Yeah, it's a difficult.
Hey, Suits here.
Yeah, I see that. He should get in here. Yeah, Ron Paul was a real interesting thing. He basically cured some political apathy that I had because after the '04 election, I became very disenchanted with the political process, and really for about 3 years I didn't pay attention to much politics at all. And I watched sports and just kind of turned myself off to it because I used to be very politically active. I was a very staunch conservative, actually, and campaigned for Bush in 2000 when I was like 20 years old. But I got really upset though, because, you know, you see a lot of hypocrisy within your own party. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's like, we're not being honest about this or this or this. And I found a lot of people not being willing to do that. So when Ron Paul came along, I got behind him, not so much in '08, because I just went and voted for the Libertarian Party just because I refused to vote for either of the two major parties. But in 12, I actually tried to be involved in the process, and basically because we do the electoral college kind of thing or whatever. You have to have like or not electoral college, that's for electing the president, but part of the process in selecting the candidates is you have to go through like the process to gather all the delegates. So I actually went to one of the Republican caucuses to try to get I guess myself as one of the representatives to get Ron Paul nominated, and got to witness what political party railroading looks like on the local level. They completely railroaded. God damn it, I'm just spaced the Mormon guy. that ran for president in
Romney.
12. Romney, dirt.
Romney, yeah.
Yeah, but they railroaded Romney into place, and we basically had some Santorum supporters and some Ron Paul supporters, which if we had worked in coalition would have worked out to being able to not have those delegates to go to Romney, but they wouldn't follow the Roberts Rules of Order that they're supposed to follow in these caucuses, and they ended up basically pushing it through and banging the gavel and saying it was over, even knowing there was like people literally screaming in this auditorium about how this wasn't right, and we were trying to get this all sorted out. And that happened at a couple of other of these caucuses as well, and made at least a lot of local news here, because there was one that was in a high school auditorium, and the Ron Paul people tried holding like basically if these things get shut down, there's some processes they can do where if they stay on site that they can still try to get these delegates, and people ended up getting arrested, and it was a whole big hullabaloo. But after I witnessed that railroading in person, I'm like, yeah, these political elections are completely rigged. It's like nobody that's ever of a grassroots nature or an outside nature stands any chances the way things currently are structured of actually being able to ascend to a position where they could even make a debate to even try to influence anybody, because of the way they have to have the 15% or whatever here to be able to participate in the debates.
Yeah, it's fucking dirty politics, isn't it? It's just a shit show all around. You wanted to, sorry, change topic, but you wanted to talk. You said you wanted to talk about the Aboriginal sort of situation in Australia, because you didn't have much insight into that. And I thought that would be a good topic, because there's similar things happening in Australia that are sort of happening with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, and not aware. I mean, obviously, it seems at least just from a completely layman's perspective, not having done any research on this, but it seems like you have similar kind of things there with the Aboriginal population, kind of like we have with the Native Americans, and then maybe slightly different than with the Black people here, because maybe they weren't necessarily natives to the country. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to what your history with that is.
Well, I think that's a good point that you brought up. Is a lot of people straight off associate Aboriginals, because they're Black, with African Americans, and that's not the right comparison. The right comparison would be with Native Americans, because Aboriginals are the indigenous people, just like Native Americans are, and they have a lot of the same problems that Native Americans have. So they have, run the gamut: the high levels of alcoholism, the low life expectancies, the levels of domestic violence, crime, incarceration, all of those things across the board, which of course African Americans have too. But obviously African American, the legacy there is fairly unique. They're not an indigenous people. They were dragged to another continent against their will and treated as slaves for a couple of hundred years. So there's that context that should be laid out there. But that being said, we are now experiencing the same kind of victim politics that's going on. So we most recently now, I think it was Monday, a young 14-year-old Aboriginal boy was murdered. They're calling it manslaughter at this stage. The investigation is not finished, but basically these are all the facts we have. He stole a motorbike. And the man that he stole a motorbike from ran him down in his car. And so I think they're calling it manslaughter because they obviously think that he didn't intend to kill the kid. He intended to maybe knock him off the bike. Who knows? There's still a chance that that charge can be escalated to full-blown murder, but they haven't done that as yet. So, of course, the reaction in the community was they came out, not just in protest, but attacking police. They tried to break into the local courthouse where the man was being, what you would call in the United States, arraigned. They pelted the courthouse with bottles, smashed up. You can go watch my video on this. I've got all the footage on there. They smashed the courthouse windows, tried to break in. They smashed cop cars. They attacked cops. They tried to beat the shit out of cops. And this is a small town in Western Australia, so there aren't a lot of cops there, and they were outnumbered, and they used pepper spray, and they held their own, and then kind of a riot squad was called in from another town, so that it was dealt with. They had arrested about 10 people, Aboriginals, for protest, and they said they were going to arrest more. I don't know what the update is on that, but a lot of the same tactics, as you can see, for example, in the States with Milwaukee, where it's act out violently first and ask questions later, right? No one trusts the judicial system or the police to do their job. And in this case, it's not a police shooting, it's civilian on civilian. But a lot of the same tactics. Let's just riot. For a lot of them, this is an excuse to riot, to break shit, to vandalize, and ask questions later. And I think they are, to some extent, inspired by movements like Black Lives Matter. So that's kind of the background. Now, there's also, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I saw your video on it, and I was quite surprised how similar that scene was to compare to what we've seen in the last couple of years in multiple cities here in the U.S. Does it look to me though? Do your general police there not carry weapons like firearms?
They do.
Oh, okay.
I can't. Yeah, so they do, but
I was kind of surprised that they just had looked like they had shields and batons and just the mason, because usually here you don't see so much with the glass bottles and stuff getting thrown at the cops, because a lot of times they'll come out with their assault rifles and things like that when that happens.
Well, see, we don't. I think that's the difference probably, but is that in the United States, because you know that your civilian population is armed, at least to some of them, that I think it escalates quicker in the United States, right? And cops are less likely to take chances, right? Like if you're a cop in the United States and you've pulled someone over and there's a good chance that they've got a gun on them, I mean, you take a lot less chances. In Australia here, though, because we have, unless you have a reason to own a gun, like you're a shooter, you're a farmer, a few other reasons, you don't have guns generally, so the population is not armed. But there's an illegal market for it. Obviously, we have problems with biker gangs that have arms, but generally, they will use every avenue before they pull a gun. Now, I don't know in that specific instance if those riot police were sent in only with the batons and some pepper spray. I don't know. I would assume they all carry weapons, but I don't know. Suit just put in there, our police grab the gun last, usually shield, baton, then tasers before gun. I mean, I assume that's the same in the United States. But again, the United States, you've just got so much more chance of running into a criminal who is armed, right, with a gun than you do in Australia.
I completely didn't think of that. For me, just living here, it's normalized. It's something I've always had to think about, particularly in the city I live in, is a pretty violent city. So it's just something always on my mind. So I didn't even think about that when I was watching the footage. I'm surprised they don't have guns out. Just hey, stop now.
Yeah. I mean, they will pull them. It happens. Someone just got shot the other. Some guy was running through a fucking mall like a madman trying to stab people, and he did stab a couple of people. And a female officer, I think, shot him, and she shot a couple other people too, fucking civilians, while she was at it. But yeah, it happens. So Suit says in here, even when guns are used, they shoot legs before body and head. So I didn't know that. I thought it was shoot to kill, but perhaps it's not in Australia.
It would make more sense if you're not having to worry about so many of your citizens being armed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, here, if you're worried about somebody has a gun, shooting them in the leg ain't going to help you if they could still shoot you back.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I sympathize with police in America. I think it's so unfair to fucking, Monday morning quarterback a fucking police shooting where a policeman has split second to make a judgment call. It's either his life or somebody else's. I think it's a very difficult situation to be in, and to second guess that. I mean, there are obviously blatant situations where a guy's running away and you shoot him in the back or something, but most of the time, I mean, how do you second guess this shit? They're just as scared as the fucking criminal.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I had to stop watching quote unquote cop porn for that reason, because I'd watch it and I'd get really mad because I'm someone of the opinion that I do believe there's a problem with police violence in the United States, but now, you know, hashtag not all. I also don't think it's necessarily every cop, and sometimes you know, just like I made my video about collectivism, sometimes I have to remind myself that, you know, people are individuals, cops are individuals, and while I do see a problem with the overall training and structure of the police, there doesn't mean there's not individual cops that are still trying to do the right thing. So sometimes, you know, I'm as guilty of that as some people sometimes. And I got caught up with that really bad after the Michael Brown shooting, because you know, obviously I saw the footage, but I also know how these police stops happen sometimes, because in my city I see it all the time. You get driving while black, basically, where minorities do statistically get targeted more in certain areas and pulled over, and that is a problem. So sometimes in these stops, the way the stops are initiated aren't necessarily in a way conducive to de-escalating a situation, because the police sometimes are given a lot of leeway for, like, say, swearing or being aggressive with the people that they're investigating. And, you know, those are more kind of the criticisms that I have, rather than saying there's a blanket problem with the cops being racist. It's like, no, I don't think really that's a black or a white thing. I think sometimes when they go overboard, that's just a training thing, and, you know, some other underlying things that could stand to be addressed.
But even so, I read some statistics on this, that even when, like, black people get pulled over more, like, I don't think that's even up for debate. They do, but there's a reason for that, and it turns out that black people are committing just more traffic violations. For example, driving without a seatbelt, driving with a broken taillight. They speeding. Black people get more tickets for speeding than anybody else. I've read this, and so a lot of the black people are being targeted. Well, you're not being targeted. You know, it's like saying if black people are 10 times more likely to shoplift, and then you arrest 10 times the number of black people for shoplifting and say, we're being targeted. No, you're not. You're committing the fucking crime 10 times as much. Like in New York City, I broke the stats down on this. Black people are 11 times more likely to rape. They are something like 35 times more likely to be involved in a shooting, 17 times more likely to murder. This is New York City. And so when you look at stop and frisk numbers, where black people are stop and frisked something like 6 to 7 times more than your average white person, it's like, yeah, because they're the suspects a lot more of the time. I mean, I guess the problem with stop and frisk is it violates basic rights, and you know, they've all been eliminated in New York now. It's fuck all from what it used to be. But this idea, I think, that black people are targeted, I would say, yeah, they are, but there's a reason they're targeted, because they're committing shitloads more crime per capita than other people.
Yeah, and
that's the way I look at it.
And certainly, and certainly, there's other factors that come to play in that, because you know, certainly socioeconomical structures, which a lot of the black community find themselves living in, certainly plays a part in that. At least, you know, particularly the area I live in, you know, there's literally parts of town that are, you know, basically like the black part of town. So, you know, you basically have these. I don't know if ghettos are really the right way to say it, because they're not always that bad of neighborhoods, but you have neighborhoods where there's a lot more poorer, primarily minorities, and because of that, you know, maybe you have somebody that's speeding because I'm not saying it's justifying breaking the law, but I'm just saying, you know, maybe it's a single mother trying to get a kid to dropped off at school in the morning and then get to a job, and because they're a single parent and they're in a tough situation, then they're not able to afford the repair on the car, for why they get pulled over for the taillight while they're speeding to the job. And like I said, I'm not trying to say that justifies it, but I think that definitely are contributing factors to why you see those numbers so much more higher. And it's not that it's because they're being racist towards black people because of the color of their skin, but it's more these are the socioeconomic conditions that you find themselves under. And I would be willing to bet if you probably go to poor white neighborhoods, you're probably find similar things with those kind of tickets and stops.
Yeah, those numbers have been done, and it's exactly right. I mean, there's an undeniable correlation between crime and poverty. Undeniable. I think the problem becomes when people like Black Lives Matter and their sort of surrogates want to just say it's because of poverty, therefore they get a pass, and the poverty is because white people. Right? This is it. It's institutionalized or systematic racism, which is an interesting thing to say, because then when you ask them, so can you name me the institution or the systematized racism you're talking about? They can't. They can't name it. They'll come up with an anecdote about somebody, but they might say something like, "Oh, well, black people being denied for loans," and you know that white people are regularly denied for loans as well, and it has to do with credit scores and income. It doesn't have anything to do with your fucking color of your skin. And so, what I don't like about you're absolutely right. Correlation between crime and poverty is undeniable. We see it here, same thing in Australia. Aboriginal people are extremely poor and they're extremely overrepresented in crime. No doubt about it. The thing is, what do you do about it? Well, I think throwing more welfare at people is not the right thing to do. That obviously doesn't work. But I don't think allowing people to riot and say, oh, well, they're poor and the system has failed them and therefore we should just let them fucking destroy businesses and not arrest them. I don't think that's the approach either, which is kind of, Obama's weak on this. He says, he'll meet with Black Lives Matter's people in the White House, and then he'll say things on TV like, oh, well, there's a way to protest and there's a way not to protest. That's about as strong as he ever comes out against it. He never, I'm sorry, this should be a clear message. You don't do this. Your situation may be unfortunate, but you don't get to fucking, most of the time they're destroying businesses in their own fucking communities. That's what's annoying.
It's just downright fucking stupid is what it is. It's like, you're trying to make a life better for yourself. You're blaming, the man for why you're down. But then when something happens in your community that upsets you, you take to destroying the community, the very community that you live in, instead of maybe addressing the underlying issues as to why, maybe some of these situations still are in effect, and whether or not you feel it's a system of oppression or whatever that's affecting you or not. The fact of the matter is there's not going to be a snapping of a fingers that's going to happen that's going to make the world better for minorities in these communities. No. They certainly are living out the after effects of some things that have happened, like particularly in my city. Now, this doesn't come into play as much anymore, but the reason why you have some of these segregated areas, and I would imagine probably in Australia, and you can tell me if this is similar or different, but like here, as industrialization happened after the turn of the into the 20th century, we basically had more suburbanization, particularly as we headed into the 40s and 50s, and they started building the interstate system here in the United States. So what they had happen is what I've heard deemed, I believe it's called the absence of ecology, or ecology absence, where basically people were looking for suburban houses that were larger, that had more property, and they were leaving the pre-existing cities, houses that were built in the city. And as a result of that, it created a vacuum where you had less workers in the city. So therefore, the industry in the city also left and went out to the suburbs as well. So then the people that were of lower socioeconomical disadvantage then couldn't afford or didn't have the means to be able to travel to these jobs. And basically you saw neighborhoods spiral out of control as a result of it. In my city here, we literally have in parts of town where there are vast tracts of blocks of city where there's not even houses anymore, because back after the turn of the century, as more industrialization happened and there wasn't agricultural jobs anymore, a lot of blacks who used to be slaves or were descendants of slaves then had to try to find jobs that were no longer agricultural jobs, so they flocked to cities. And then basically that's how a lot of these ghettos got established, was racist zoning practices. You could only be in these certain parts of town, and then there were practices in place where they wouldn't, and again, this is before the 60s, prior to the 60s, where they wouldn't give loans to people to do home improvement in these parts of town. A lot of these older houses didn't have plumbing, and they wouldn't give them the loans for the upgrading and stuff, either because of credit qualifications or just because of plain racial practices in it. And as a result, this is what you're left with today, is because of that vacuum and people that couldn't move out. You have just literally blighted communities, and that's what people grow up into. But then you got to ask yourself, well, how do you get out of this situation? If every time you feel that the man's getting you down, you decided to set fire to whatever's left, that's not going to improve yourself. You have to look at the causations, and a lot of it has to do with single parent households, people not graduating high school. These are things that, no matter how much you want to point the finger at white men or institutionalized racism, these things are not going to be overcome by demanding that white people give it to you. You're going to have to actually put in the work to get those things for yourself.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. To anyone who's pulled themselves up in life knows it's generally through your own hard work. And it's just an unfortunate look. I come from working class. That's what I come from. My brother, who's 3 years older than me, is the first person in my entire extended family to go to university, and I was the second. That's what I come from. But that's the way it works. You have to pull yourself up, and you have a generation. And look, it's the same here. And I'm not talking about Aboriginal people. I'm talking about uneducated white people in this country, in Australia, that there's a generation of people now, 2 generations of people who've been brought up on the idea that the state will take care of you to some extent. They will pay you some kind of living wage to do nothing. And there is no incentive for you to go out and do it. And it's so entrenched now that we have a right-wing government in power here. They have made overtures, policies, ideas to say that, for example, you can only stay on we call the unemployment. Oh, actually, I don't even know what we fucking call it anymore here, but always changing names. Unemployment benefits anyway, that you can only get it for 6 months, or that you have to be put on a waiting list, that you can't get it for 6 months or 3 months. You don't just get to walk in and get unemployment benefits straight away. You have to wait 3 months, for example, because you got kids at high school, leave high school, and they can walk down and start getting unemployment benefits the next day.
What?
And they wanted to put that, and they wanted to put them on a waiting list and say, look, you can't do that. You got to go 3 months before. These kids are living at home still with their fucking parents. It's ridiculous. But this is the ever encroaching welfare state. It just grows and grows and grows and grows. And there's a whole generation, or 2 generations of people who think they're entitled to shit. And I was never brought up that way. I was brought up that, when I was 14, I wanted an electric guitar, and my parents said, yeah, well, go out and get yourself a job and save that money, and you can get yourself an electric guitar. And that's exactly what I did. Went and got a part-time job, saved $500, got an electric guitar. But there's a whole generation who thinks that they should just be given shit for existing.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I was definitely brought up very working class too, at least my mom and dad's side of the family. I think I've got one aunt or maybe 2 that have completed college, but out of me and my cousins, which there's numerous of us, only a couple of us have gone to college. I haven't myself. So it's I always find it funny when people criticize or they mention the bootstraps myth, because to a degree they're kind of right. It's kind of hard to pull yourself up from absolutely nothing, but I don't think that what we're talking about there, though, is necessarily talking about having to pull yourself up from necessarily nothing, but it's like, what do you do with the opportunities you have? Are you making the most of opportunities, or even giving yourself any opportunities of all, or are you sitting back and waiting for something to happen to you? And I think that's what the crux of this whole situation is you got people demanding this kind of change and saying that these are all institutionalized sort of things that are happening, but at the same time it's like, they don't look at their own selves in the mirror and say, honestly, are you putting in the hard work and effort that we all have to do in order to succeed? I mean, just because I'm a white male doesn't mean that I don't have to get up in the morning and go to a job. Doesn't mean that I have to deal with stress at work that I don't want to or don't like to deal with. Doesn't mean I don't have to live next to the railroad with the train going by right now. All these things are all things that we have to deal with, especially when we're lower income earners. But when you try to live off the welfare state though and say, pay me first and then I'll put forth some effort, it's like, what's the incentive to do something like that? And at least here, I don't know how it's structured for you guys there, but it's almost you can be too rich to be poor, like where there's this kind of borderline where you won't be making enough money to survive, but you make too much money to qualify for benefits. So it disincentivizes anybody to start reaching towards those lower economic rungs and take those jobs where you develop skills. Everybody bitches about $15 an hour fast food jobs, but the reality of the matter is those are lower paying jobs because they're teaching you those skills that you need to be able to build upon to make more of yourself. It's not impossible to make a decent living for yourself with only a high school education. I'm living proof of that. But the thing is, you actually got to suck up your pride, show up at your job, be there on time, don't call in sick and miss a bunch of days, maybe stay working at that job for better than a year or more, so that way you can establish that you're a reliable employee that's willing to stick around. It's like then you will start getting the jobs that pay $15 an hour. It's like you can't start climbing from 4 rungs up without having a bottom rung to put your foot on in the first place.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, if you've got a system that pays you essentially a minimum wage to stay home, why the fuck would you go out and work a minimum wage job? And that's why, it's all about incentives. People respond to incentives. I mean, if CEOs respond to incentives, and the lowest people in society will respond to incentives given the right ones. And yeah, you know what? Some people are going to fall through the cracks. It always happens, but the politician needs to stand up and say, look, life is not fair. It's not fucking fair. And we shouldn't set about trying to make it fair. Like you said, we have to make the opportunities we're given. And guess what, poor people? It is going to be harder for you. That's your lot in life. It's fucking harder for you. But no one owes you a living. No one owes you a job. No one owes you money. You need to earn it. And you need to prove yourself. Equip yourself with the skills that people are willing to pay for. It's that simple. And this whole what I think you're seeing in the West right now with the sort of the rise of the Bernie bros who want free university education. I think what we're seeing, and I think this is a good thing, by the way, even though this is the opposite of how it's projected in the media. I think university as something that everyone in society can aspire to is a bullshit idea. I think my personal opinion is far less people should go to university. Far more people should start their own businesses. Far more people should be entrepreneurs. Far more people should get into trades or other things like that. Because if you're not bright, if you can't go to university, or you're not going to succeed, or you're going to end up in some bullshit liberal arts subject that there is no job at the end of, because that's what a lot of the anger is about. It's that there's no jobs at the end of these bullshit courses. Why the fuck are you there? Don't waste your time. I mean, I think I'll give you my cousin. He's probably the wealthiest person in my extended family. Now, he has a high school education. He's not very bright, but he owns his own fucking business. And he's built it up. He's worked hard all his life. And he owns $1 million property. He sends all his kids to private schools. He has a great fucking life because he worked hard. That's all he did. He's a hard worker. He runs his own business. He's only got like 3 or 4 people work for him, but that's it. And I think this is why, to some extent, even though you have the feminization of higher education, and they're trying to do it in the workplace, where they want to remodel the workplace to make it more quote unquote flexible for women, which just means I can knock off at 3 o'clock and go pick up the fucking kids, and still get paid the same, and take 2 years out of the workforce and still come back and expect to get paid the same, which is bullshit. I mean, all of this type of stuff, I quietly not that worried about it, because I think men are adaptable. They will seek other ways to make themselves valuable, because that's part of our psychological makeup. We will find ways. And the way forward, I think, I would like to see men encouraging other men to become entrepreneurs, become small business owners, to take risks that way. And fuck it, because the risk of going to university is enormous, to throw down 50, 60, 70,000 on an education that might end in you working flipping burgers anyway.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. I've known people that have graduated college, and because of the amount of debt they have, by the time they pay their debt for their education, and then factor in what it costs or what they get paid, that actually their take-home pay is less than what I take home not having gone to college, and it'll be that way for like 20 years until they've paid down like student loans. So even though they've invested that money into it, and eventually they might be out earning me, at least in that initial 10 to 20 first years, it doesn't really work out that way for them for a lot of those kind of jobs. And you brought up a very interesting point, and something that I say a lot too is, it's not even sometimes because people are unintelligent. Just I think people have intelligence in different ways. But yeah, definitely a push for trade school type things would definitely be more the way to go. I didn't go to college because I knew at the end of the day, because this is how I was in high school, I don't like having to sit and do all the book work is a lot of the things for me. It's like I can take in information and learn it and digest it, but when it comes to actually like sitting down at a test time and trying to put that stuff down on paper where you have to memorize it, I'm not a read and regurgitate type of person. I know where to find the answers kind of person. So like a trade school would have been a much better thing to encourage me to do, or they should have kids going to maybe technical high schools more often, where maybe instead of teaching them 2 more years of geometry and algebra 2 that they're never going to use, maybe they can learn how to be electricians, or heating and ventilation, air conditioning technicians, or any number of other things that are very necessary, needed jobs that actually pay pretty decently. But everybody's got their focus on college and the amount of money that it takes to go do that. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Mike Rowe. He's he was on a show called Dirty Jobs. I don't know if you guys get that down there, but he's an American guy. But basically, his show Dirty Jobs was all predicated on these jobs that like nobody wants to do, but guys found things to do. So you'd go he'd be like a taxidermist, or one time he had to climb one of those really tall transmission towers to change like a light bulb way the hell, 500 or 1,000 feet up in the air. And his point was he said when he went to his high school guidance counselor and they were trying to figure out what he was going to do, he said there was a picture on the wall in the guidance counselor's office that showed like a picture of a guy with a diploma, like the sun shining behind him, and then there was a guy in like overalls, like dirty and looking sad and stuff, and what do you want to do? You want to do this or this? It's like, well, why are we demonizing trade jobs? Why are we saying that college is the only way to go? Why are we disrespecting people who have skills that the rest of us don't have? I mean, I would love to be able to build houses if I didn't have a really crappy physical makeup where I break down all the time. I got bad knees and bad back and a bad neck. But if I didn't, I would love to be swinging a hammer, building buildings, or doing masonry work or stuff like that. I have a shit ton of respect for people that do that. And my question is why don't we encourage kids to do these other things? It's almost like, if you don't go to college, you're going to be a failure. And that's the only way we paint this picture for kids.
I fucking hate that message. I mean, and I say, I have 2 degrees. I have a fucking undergrad and I have a master's degree. And I was like you, I don't like book learning. And the only reason I did a master's degree because I did it when I was 31 years of age. And that was the first time in my life that I was mature enough to sit down and actually, I was actually interested, and I sat down and I read a lot, and I did the master's degree, and I did great in that degree. I struggled in my undergrad because I just wanted to get hammered and fucking hang out with my friends. But Yeah, I think this whole you have to go to you don't. You can get skills. Imagine how much skills a kid can get if he's even just slightly technically minded and he has his own computer and he stakes, and something goes wrong with it and he decides to take it apart himself and fiddle with it. And this kid's going to get such an education on, and you can go on YouTube and watch people take their computers apart and learn all kinds of shit. Get your own education at home in your own fucking, just with an internet connection these days. You can get this education. You can make yourself useful. And then, well, as you say, like send people to trade schools. How about sending them to a 1-year course where, you know what, we're going to teach you how to set up a small business. And some of these businesses are going to fucking fail, but this is how you do it. And this is what you got to do. What's your area of interest? What's your tech? Oh, you've been taking computers apart since you're 10 years old? Fucking great. How about you open yourself up as a computer repair shop? This is how you do it. This is all the forms you need to fill out. This is what you need to get. That is far more useful. Like you said, building houses. I mean, if you're like me, and I think this happens to a lot of men, there's something, it's a male thing. When you walk past a house, like I will stop and watch because it fascinates me. I love to see you walk past this house and all you see is a concrete slab. You come back a week later, the frame is up. Then the boards are going up, the tiles are going on, and the landscaping. I love watching that shit. It's fascinating to me. And how much pride is there in knowing that you built something that someone now fucking lives in? I mean, that's probably more than I'll ever do in my fucking life, I feel. Someone building a house.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been awe of people that can do things like that. Somebody, Lone Wolf in the chat there said mentioned auto mechanics, and that's another thing too. Just like with building the houses, somebody that knows how all these parts go together and how the vehicle operates, and helps you keep it maintained. And these are skills that not all of us can have, and some people are more tactile learners. They do better with their hands than trying to memorize stuff. Like you just said about building computers, I wish somebody had done that for me when I was a kid. The first computer I ever had, or at least proper computer, it wasn't the old Commodore that I started out with. I built out of spare parts that a buddy of mine's uncle had, and we'd go to his house and clean house for him. And he owned his own business, and he was into this technology stuff, so he always had computer parts all over the place. And one time he's like, "Oh, if you want some of these computer parts, you can build a computer with it." So I built this computer, and I used to run my own bulletin board and stuff like that. And if somebody had said, hey, why don't you go into business and build computers or fix computers rather than people always pushing me to college, maybe that would have been a career track I would have stayed on. But instead, I wasn't encouraged to do that. Yeah. Everybody was pushing me to go to college, so I just ended up getting frustrated because then I was taking all the classes in high school that I really shouldn't have been, because they were just frustrating me and discouraging me from higher education or what I could have done. And I kind of wandered into the industry that I'm in now after working in convenience stores for a couple of years. And I could have been right at it right out of high school building computers if I would have had any inclination that would have been something that it could have been done. And you said it perfectly. Like here in high school, like they require, at least in my state, a consumer economics class, so you know how to set a budget and write out a check and stuff like that. Right. Why don't they have something like you said? Why don't they have like a class where, hey, this is how you can start a business, and maybe teach kids about small business even at the high school level, how to fill out the forms and do the taxes and pricing structures. I mean, this is not, this is not majorly complicated stuff. I've been a department manager and I've managed to figure out, how to do stuff like that. So why don't we do this at younger ages? Let's let the kids that maybe already have an inclination that maybe they're not going to go to college, maybe select some more productive classes that they could take in high school.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the amount of idiots out there that, and I call them idiots, but I realize, a lot of it's got to do with personal circumstance, but I'm not a very empathetic person, you may have realized. But here's the thing, the amount of idiots that live every week with a credit card balance that they just pay, for example, the minimum payment, and they just, they put a couch for $600 on their fucking credit card and they end up paying $1,000 for it. because they just, a lot of the time they don't even know that this is happening for them, right? They don't even know that they're being fucked this way, because they don't know that their credit card has 25% interest on it or something. Even after, Pocahontas got credit card companies to reduce their terms and conditions to 2 pages or whatever, Elizabeth Warren. But even after that, people still don't get it, and they still think that this is a normal way to go about it. Now, you were probably brought up like me, which is my parents said, if you don't have the money, you don't buy it. And that doesn't mean you don't use a credit card, but it means if you don't have the money to pay that thing off within the first month before you get hit with interest, then you don't buy it. That's as simple as that. And you go without until you save enough money for it. It's the same with these bullshit, I'm sure you have this in the States, 36 months interest free, right?
Yeah.
But they hit you with like a setup charge at the beginning, like, it's $100 to set this thing up, which is idiots. That is the interest. They've just taken the interest off and put it in a charge up front. They've done the maths on this. They've done the fucking maths on this. They're not losing out here. You're not getting a great deal. You're getting fucked because you're greedy and you're spending more money than you have. Don't spend it. And that's why we have a situation here in all over the Western world. The problem is, and it has not been addressed since the financial crisis, debt, and more debt. That's people living beyond their means, people having expectations that are just way out there. Kids coming out of university, they both got a job, young couple, 25 years of age. They want to move into a $600,000-$700,000 brand new home. Double-story swimming pool in the backyard. They think this is, they're kind of entitled to this. Yeah, not that they're entitled, but they don't understand, like, your parents didn't do this. They moved into an old house, or not an old house even, but, something that was 10 or 15 years old. They
smaller, more modest.
They maintained it. Yeah, they maintained it. They sold it. They improved their lot in life, their jobs, and they got a better one. Or maybe they even built a new one if they're lucky enough. I mean, this is the way it happens. You don't, this instant gratification generation. Oh, I went to university. I demand a job that's paying $75K a year straight out of uni. And I want a brand new house. Why not? Fucking sad.
Yeah, it really, really is. It's like there's there's no delayed gratification anymore, and unfortunately, I found myself in some trouble with that when I was in my 20s. Fortunately, I don't have credit card debt anymore, but I had some pretty high balances at one point in time, because what I would always get bit with is, like you were talking about, the quote unquote, we got zero interest if a few months, and you're like, all right, I'll go out and get that thing, 'cause I'll get it. What's that?
You just cut out real briefly, but you're back. So yeah,
sorry about that.
Keep going.
But no, I was saying that I've gotten bit by these things before, where they say, oh, well, you get no interest for 12 months on the credit card. So you then go, say you're going to go to Best Buy and you want a TV, so you're like, oh, I'll pay that off in 12 months. But the problem is you're, say, like a 25-year-old kid and you're an idiot. So you don't get that paid off, because you want to buy beer and throw a barbecue and have your buddies over to your house to watch the TV that you just bought. So next thing you know, you get to the end of the 12 months, and although at least here anyway, a lot of times they don't charge you like a setup fee or anything, but they do charge you all the interest for every month going back to when the beginning of that arrangement began, if you don't get it paid off in time. So all of a sudden you see very demonstrably that $600 TV that you bought all of a sudden just cost you $1,000 or $1,200, and all of a sudden you get 1 month where they just load all that interest on there because you just exceeded the 12 months. And I had to learn some hard lessons like that. Unfortunately, my parents didn't really set a bad example of credit cards, but I guess maybe because they weren't open with us about finances, and we didn't realize what those struggles really were, because they really kept it close to the vest. And I really think it's good for parents to be a little bit more open with their kids about finances, honestly, so that way they realize it's more of a struggle than it appears to outsiders. But I had to come back from 5-digit credit card debt to get it down to nothing, and that's a really tough lesson to have to learn. And I really wish they would focus more on teaching kids these things, because I mean, credit cards are absolutely the devil. I mean, they just are. They're useful for emergencies, but as far as just being open lines of credits to buy crap, it's one of the worst ideas ever. And ever since I changed my philosophy on credit cards and stopped engaging in using them the way that I had in the past, it's like now I find that, you know, you actually can build a little bit of savings and you can have a little bit more financial flexibility because now you're not maintaining debt that you already have, which, like you said, in the Western world, now this translates to all of our governments operate in the same selfish way where we don't delay the things that we want at all. We just keep right on spending, you know, to the point where the United States is pushing $20 trillion in debt after only being about 800 billion in the hole when I was born.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. And what you're doing is you're pushing it out to the next generation. Someone has to pay the piper. And, you know, they're not going to be too happy about it. But like you say, I mean, why isn't it? I mean, this is basic stuff, basic maths. Why isn't this taught in basic maths in middle school? I think you call it in Australia. Once you leave elementary school, it's all high school. There's no junior high. It's just all high school. Everybody's mixed in. But you know, when you're 15, 16, I mean, why isn't this? I mean, look, here's what happens when you get a credit card. Here's what happens when you don't pay the balance. Here's how much money you end up paying for that fucking TV set that you're happy to have. You end up paying twice as much. I mean, this is the thing. You know, I always laugh when people go, "Oh, you know, they've got this 36 months interest-free deal." It's like, do you realize they're not giving shit away here? They've done the numbers on this. They realize that the setup fee or the way that they do it where you are. They've done the numbers on this. This still works for them. You're not getting a good deal here. It's just, do you not understand this? They are not, people see this and go, oh, wow, they're fucking giving away TVs with no interest. No, idiot. They've already factored that in. It's the same when you see on TV and they say, this, you know, some piece of bullshit, and we say, it's got a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're not satisfied, just mail it in. You know why they do that? Because even people, 80% of people who buy that thing and they're not satisfied, they can't be bothered. We know this. People are not bothered to send shit back. It's like, I paid $50 for this piece of shit. I don't like it. What the fuck? I'm not going to worry about $50. They know this. That's why they put the money back guarantee in there, because fucking nobody or hardly anybody ever uses it. That's the whole point. You see, and they've done the numbers. They've crunched the numbers. Insurance companies do the same thing with your insurance premiums. They crunch the numbers. They know what to charge you. And the only thing that throws them out are natural disasters. But when it comes to cars and all the rest of it, they know the numbers on this shit. You're the one that's getting fucked there. You're not getting a good deal.
Yeah. It's like, it sounds too good to be true. It probably is.
Exactly.
Or as George Carlin once said.
You summed that up.
Yeah,
you summed that up in 5 seconds when it took me about 3 minutes.
Well, I think it was George Carlin that once said, whoever coined the phrase "let the buyer beware" was probably bleeding from the asshole.
Exactly.
Like, very, very true. It's like, I often wonder what people think with some of the things that they get themselves involved with. Sometimes it's like, you know, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. And it's like, I kind of try to pride myself in not getting tricked by these little scammy things. And like I said, I've fallen victim to doing before, mostly because of ignorance and not because of not knowing the consequences. But you know, sometimes though these things are very convoluted the way that they throw them out there. You know, Suits mentioning in the chat, you know, about loan protection that they sell, where they make it sound like it's like the life of the loan, but in reality it's only like for like an introductory period of time. I've seen those kind of things. You know, they just completely.
How many?
Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry, man. What about the financial crisis when they were giving, you know, these, what were they called? Alt-A mortgages, where, so, you know, you were 30,000, you're earning 30 grand a year, and they, here, buy a $500,000 house. I can't afford that. Oh no, well, you only have to pay half payments for the first 2 years. And then after 2 years, it kicks in and you go to full payment. But that's not our fucking problem then, because we've already sold the mortgage on to somebody else, because we bundled it up. We've got the rating agencies to stamp it AAA, and we sold it in a collateralized debt obligation off to some fucking bank on the other side of the world. It's not our problem when you default on the loan, you know. But these people are too stupid to see that up front. So like if they had this basic understanding, look, dude, you can't afford the payments on this house. You'll never own this house unless your income increases dramatically. It's simple maths.
Yeah, and they also the loan agencies always like to tell you can afford way more house than you really can too. Like my wife and I, when we bought our first house, they pre-approved us for like $150,000, and I worked it out, and that would have been, God, like on a 30-year-old loan, I want to say that would have been like $1,500 or like $1,700 a month. And we're like, well, fuck, we can't afford that. We've been paying like $500 a month in rent. It's like, you know, maybe a $700, $800, $900 most month mortgage would be a little bit more responsible. So we ended up buying a $90,000 house instead, which we actually way overpaid for because we bought in 2004 when the housing bubble was really starting to cook here in the States. So we ended up completely losing our asses on our house because we tried to sell it 7 years later. I'm sorry. And because of the recession happening and then some industry closing down in the area I lived and a bunch of people putting up their houses on the same time, we lost $30,000 on the house that we paid a mortgage for diligently and worked hard for, you know, and we improved the house and shit like that and still lost a fuck ton of money on it. And then it's like, but then you see people just doing absolutely dumb shit. Like they had these ARM loans, the adjustable rate mortgage loans.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's a couple of different kinds of them. Well, back then they were doing all these teaser rates where they would tell you, well, we're going to give you a 3.9% ARM rate, but what they didn't tell you, or what people didn't pay attention to, was it was scheduled to go up 5% 5 years later after you get into it. So that's great. You're paying, you know, maybe you got into the $150,000 house, and you're paying $750 a month for it. But then all of a sudden, boom, your mortgage jumps up and almost doubles, and you're like, well, what the fuck's happening? Well, because dumbass, you didn't think a couple of years down the road what you were going to do when that happened.
Yeah. And the whole relationship between the old-fashioned relationship between, you know, the person you this is you know the problem with the securitization industry. The person that you took the loan with is now is sort of your banker for life. That's not the case. Someone else owns your mortgage. You know, they bundle this up and securitize the loan and sell it off to somebody else. And so you don't even know who owns your fucking loan anymore. And so then you got to try and trace back. Let's say you get yourself into financial difficulty. There's a recession. Your hours get cut back, or you lose your job. You want to renegotiate your loan. You don't even know who you're renegotiating with, right? And it's easier for them just to shut you down and go, fuck, we're going to foreclose. Get the fuck out. I mean, it's a disaster. I mean, the whole financial crisis was just, you know, there was a lot of fraud in there. I mean, the FBI said in 2004, there's an epidemic of mortgage fraud, but they were all out, you know, monitoring terrorism. They didn't fuck all about it. Yeah, it's just sad that are not armed with the knowledge to sort of know, oh, I'm going to get fucked here. I mean, yeah, for 2 years, right? I pay this teaser rate. And then after that, oh, Jesus, I'm going to get reamed. I mean, why? You know, and it's because this is the line that I hate, because a lot of people take the idea that, oh, people were just getting screwed by banks. It's like, yeah, but you're getting screwed by yourself for being an idiot and believing in things, as you said before, that are too good to be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be some responsibility on the part of the consumer. And if you taught this basic maths at schools, look, dude, you earn 30 grand a year. You cannot afford a $250,000 loan. You can't. This is not possible. I know what they're saying with the teaser rate, but that is going to come back to bite you when it goes up. You know, you got to rent. Sorry.
It was kind of like with that video. I watched another video of yours today where you were talking about redistributing the top CEO salaries with the other with like the lower employees, and it's like it's that kind of simple math too that nobody reconsiders. Well, rich people have so much, and if they would just give some of it back. Well, the problem with that thinking is what you think is giving a lot back isn't giving a lot back. It's pennies on the dollar, and you think that's going to accomplish some great benefit to the bottom rung people, but now all you did was disincentivize the people that aspire to take risks and do more because you're greedy for an extra $100 over the course of a year.
Oh, I mean, this is a whole interesting topic in and of itself. Let me just say this, that So a lot of people came on and justifiably said like, hey, look, there's obviously more executives in the company that earn more than this arbitrary number of 25 times the lowest paid employees. So you didn't divide up their income. What if you divide up all their income? Then it's going to become more substantial. And that's true. But isn't it very revealing about how these people think? They think, to them, the problem is just finding enough people that earn, in their eyes, too much money and dividing it up amongst the rest. That's the way they think. They really think like this. So when people say, like, when people go from putting that thought forward and then calling you a communist or a socialist, it is fucking communist to think like that. That
spade is a spade.
Because this is an arbitrary line in the sand. This is a mathematical 25 times the bottom person's salary. I mean, this is just arbitrary. It is basically, you earn, according to me, I have some arbitrary idea that this amount of money is too much and you don't deserve it, which is just in and of itself so indefensible a statement, that we're going to take your money and everybody else like you in this corporation, your money to the lowest earners. I mean, you tell me how that is not going to kill incentives for people to work harder and climb a ladder. It is. It's just going to absolutely kill it. And then think about all the other things that would happen anyway. Like, so what do you do now? You just outsource all your lowest paid employees. You don't hire them, or you hire, or you make shell companies so that you're not part of, your executives belong in this company, and the people that work for you belong in this company, and they're disassociated in some way, so their salaries are not linked to yours. I mean, it is Orwellian. It just wouldn't work. And any country who tried to implement a system like that, see you later. Your talent goes, capital will go. It's all over for you. And if you don't get this, I mean, you need to go back and do some basic fucking economics. It destroys, as we were talking about earlier, incentives. Absolutely destroys them.
It's like, people don't realize, like, what risk is there to being a business owner or assuming control over a multi-million-dollar corporation. I mean, you hit it on it in the video. It's like, these people that get to the top don't stay at the top forever, because when they go there, they take a risk, and sometimes they fail when they take a risk. So the reason why they might get paid $3.5 million a year as a CEO isn't necessarily because they're providing $3.5 million worth of necessary value to that company per se, but it's because of the risk that they're taking. They might find themselves unemployed for potentially years or more after running a company if something goes wrong, and their reputation is now tied to that. And that's why they won't accept compensation for less, because who in their mind would risk their reputation being damaged taking control of a company if things don't go quite the way that they should? And it's not always just mismanagement. I mean, I know sometimes it is, but I mean, then something goes wrong and you're only earning $350,000 a year instead of $3.5 million a year, and now you can't work for 2 or 3 or 4 years after you run this company, or you can't get paid the same amount because nobody's ever going to hire you as a CEO again. And it's like, well, none of these people consider that now that person's not going to earn that same income potential. It's just like they think there's this, like, it seems like people that are into redistribution of wealth think there's just this pile of cash out there, and the problem is that you just gotta grab enough people by the ankle and shake it out of their pockets, and there's enough for everybody. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, there's not. The world's a zero-sum game. There's a reason why some of us get to live at the level that we do, while other people in the world live in a dirt hut, because the fact of the matter is there's not enough for us all to live at this level of life.
Yeah. I mean, there's an old saying, I think it's Warren Buffett's, or something like, when a management with a reputation for brilliance tackles a business with a reputation for bad economics, it's the reputation of the business that remains intact. A lot of the time, like you say, shitty businesses are shitty businesses. When a business is going downhill, there's not much you can do to rescue it. I mean, it might just be a case of, there's nothing you could have got the most brilliant manager in the world. He wasn't going to save the fucking buggy whip industry.
Yeah,
right?
Or like Blockbuster. Everything's on Netflix. I mean, if you're the CEO of Blockbuster, you're fucked. Nobody's running videos anymore.
Exactly. The only thing you can do if you're Blockbuster is become a Netflix. That's your only choice. And guess what? You've already been beaten. Fucking game over. Done. This is the thing again, is about This is businesses. This is what Schumpeter said when he said gales of creative destruction. This is what happens in capitalism. Things die and other things rise up in their place. I made this point on the original stream with Saigon and Dave. I said, if you look at the S&P 500, go back 50, 60 years, 75% of those companies aren't around today. They're gone. There's no guarantee that Apple will be here in 50 years. There's no guarantee Microsoft will be. Microsoft has probably seen its best days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it had its best days a decade ago. These companies come and go. They come and go. And this shouldn't be something, oh, no, so-and-so's gone out of business. Yeah, it happens. And you know what? It happens all the fucking time. And every time people say, oh, where are the jobs going to come from? This industry's gone. The car industry's gone. This industry's gone. Well, they always have. And I know we have this fear of automation and taking people's jobs away and all this kind of stuff. But if you remember, maybe you don't remember, you can read plenty about this in the early 1980s. In the United States, you just came out of the 70s, a horrible fucking decade. Mm-hmm. Vietnam War, Watergate. Now you had the oil crisis, which led to the deepest economic recession in 74 since the Great Depression. At that time, that was the deepest. The stock market was cut in half. Unemployment went over 10%. First time that had happened since the Great Depression, or since 37. Before the Second World War. And what was happening at the same time? You had the Japanese killing you on cars, manufacturing base in the United States being eaten away at. You know, you had what happens through the rest of the 70s. You know, you get Carter comes in, you've got inflation taken off. Yeah, people's wages are growing 8-9% a year. Inflation's fucking more than that. Paul Volcker comes in 1979, says he's, you know, take over the Federal Reserve, says he's going to break the back of inflation, hikes interest rates to fucking 20%. By 1980, you've got a recession, small, shallow recession. But then 81, you fall into another deep, fucking nasty recession. Unemployment goes to 10% again. Reagan's in now. Reagan had all these plans. He can't do half of them, but he still cuts taxes anyway and closes some loopholes at the top. But the stock market was at its lowest level valuation since the Great Depression. You've had literally 3 recessions in the space of less than a decade. The manufacturing base is being hollowed out. You're getting your ass kicked on cars and all kinds of electronic equipment. And everyone's running around saying, what is the American economy going to do? What are we going to do? Where are the jobs going to come from? Well, guess where they came from? They came from the Microsofts and the fucking Apples and all the rest of them, didn't they? The tech boom, boom, took off. And the next 20 years from 83, the economy starts growing again right through to 2000, fucking boom times. One small recession in there that was enough to get Bush the first kicked out, but great boom times. And then what happened? Oh, it's all over. Well, now we have the internet boom. Now we have the social media boom. Now there's going to be other booms. I'm optimistic about this stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Economics history lesson.
No, that was a very, very good recap of things. In fact, yeah, that's the thing. I think sometimes when people, you know, when they berate capitalism, a lot of times is they see some of the things that happen, particularly in America, and you know, they get scared because they see these boom and bust cycles. But you know, the markets are a cycle, unfortunately, because things in their natural element, they're going to swing. There's going to be good times and bad times, unfortunately. But what I've seemed to find, though, is when you have less of a true capitalist system and more of a crony capitalism system like we have in the United States, where you have things like corporate welfare, then you have the government picking and choosing winners and losers as a way of trying to, I guess, they feel they're trying to control these swings, not realizing that all they're doing is they're causing the swings to be more wild and varying. I mean, like when they change lending standards and they force the banks to give out loans to people that really never should have had loans given to them, and then all of a sudden we have a giant real estate bubble that comes in and busts as a result of it. It's like, this is not capitalism's failures. This is people trying to regulate a market into not swinging, instead of accepting the fact that ebbs and flows, highs and lows in the market are just always going to be a natural state of things.
Yep, it's as natural as anything. And you know, To a large extent, this is not just the United States. Look at Europe, look at Australia, look at Japan. Governments have outsourced the management of, or economic management, to central banks. And guess what? Central banks are out of firepower. They have no interest rates left to cut. We now know that quantitative easing doesn't work. All it does is extend the cycle. You're now 7 years in. The recession officially bottomed in June 2009. You're 7 years in now, more than 7 years in. The stock market bottomed in March of 2009. So you're 7.5 years into a stock market cycle. These things are already long in a tooth. I would submit to you that, and this is why I think if Trump loses and you're pro-Trump, don't worry about it too much, because the next president of the United States is going to reside over the next recession. If history is any guide, there's been no economic cycle longer than the one between 91 and 2000. That was the longest cycle post-war, about 9 years long. Now, that's the longest one there is. So this current cycle would have to go longer than the longest one in history for Hillary, if she won, to get out of the first term without a recession. And you know, recessions, I mean, Obama walked into a recession. It wasn't his fault. He didn't create it. But you know what happens? The president ends up owning that recession, don't they? That the government, whoever's in power ends up owning that recession. George Bush the first, remember how he lost that election? It's the economy, stupid. Right? He didn't create the fucking recession. And actually, by the time the election came around, you were already coming out of it. And the 90s recession was pretty shallow in the United States. But that lost him the election. So people sort of act like this is the election to end all elections. And I would say to you, if Republicans lose, you regroup and you get a better candidate than Trump, a more conservative, fiscal conservative candidate, and you thrust him forward in 2020, because Hillary's already fucking awfully unpopular. You saw that survey come out yesterday and said that both her and Trump are equally unpopular. They have 60% of people think that they're unfavorable or something like that.
Jeez.
Unbelievable. I mean, this you think about who Trump is. Imagine Obama was running against Trump. This would be over. It would be fucking over, right? There's no way Trump would beat an Obama. But this is how bad Hillary is. She should be able, a decent Democratic candidate should be able to beat Trump. And by the same token, a decent Republican candidate should be able to shit all over Hillary because she's so fucking unpopular. But you've got two of the... Can you name me an election where you've had two worse candidates? I mean, is it Carter v. Ford? I don't know. How far do you have to go back?
That would probably be the
Goldwater?
last really bad one would probably be Carter and Ford, but I don't think there's ever been any as bad as this current one, though. I mean, I've never, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen anything this bad. I mean, I'm completely unmotivated to vote. I mean, I'm not really much of a voter anymore anyway, but you know, even at that, it's like, it's what pile of shit's really better. I mean, I refuse to make that because I'm very principled on it. I won't vote for the lesser of evil because still at the end of the day you're endorsing evil then, and I refuse to do that.
See, that's what I've kind of said, is that I think if you make the argument you're voting for Trump because Hillary's so awful, I totally get that. I totally get that argument. But I also get if you're voting for Hillary because you think Trump's awful, I get that as well. I totally get that one. So probably not as appreciated by Americans as it is Australians is that the ability, like you guys have, not to vote, like a protest vote. Like in Australia, we have to vote, and if we don't vote, we get fined.
That's bizarre to me.
So yeah, you're forced to vote. So that's not very democratic, is it? But so, I mean, what you can do is you go down to the polling booth, get your name marked off, and then you can just draw a gigantic cock on your paper and hand it in, and it'll just be counted. And people do that. People actually do that. And it gets counted as informal, which means it doesn't count. But you still have to go down and get your fucking name ticked off. But, yeah, I would like because wouldn't it send a message if this American election was, because you had really high voter turnout because of Obama in 2008, right? You had a higher than normal turnout to vote.
At least compared to the last few elections.
Right. So if wouldn't it send a message if you had a less than 40% voter turnout this time around? I mean, just like, yeah, this is how disengaged people are. They're just they're so disgusted that a place like the United States could offer up such shitty candidates.
I mean, I keep expecting to wake up and have this be a Saturday Night Live joke. I mean, I seriously do. I can't believe it's come to the point that this is the two candidates that we have. And like I said, I just can't be fucked to go vote because, you know, the time it takes to go stand in the polls, there's not any like major referendums going on that I need to be concerned about. And yeah, I voted third party last time. I voted for Gary Johnson, but it's like, honestly, he's still, even though I'm libertarian, but he's kind of a milquetoast libertarian. He's not like really a real libertarian. So it's just, you know, and last time he barely got like 1% of the vote and they won't let the guy into any of the debates. So it's just like, you know, I'm sorry. It's just, if this is the way this process is going to be, that you're really going to make me pick one of these two. It's like, I'd rather take arsenic. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, and I wonder how many. So, you know, if you wind the clock back, say, you know, back to March or so, March, April, and you had, of course, you had a lot of sort of enthusiasm around Bernie Sanders, right? And which, you know, which is horrible because he's a fucking dyed-in-the-wool socialist. But you had that enthusiasm around him. Now, a lot of those people, disenchanted voters, they hate Hillary, especially all the backdoor shenanigans that have been going on there. So are they, you know, some of them are going to probably vote for Hillary because they despise Trump. Some might go over to Trump, but a lot of them probably not going to vote now, right? They're just disenchanted, just like looking at it going, well, my guy's not in there and these two suck. I'm not voting, right? And then how many you've got, of course, you've got a lot of people jumping on the Trump train. You've got a lot of people jumping on the Hillary's a woman train. But how many people are not being heard like you, who are sort of sitting there going, I can't participate in this shit. This is a joke.
Even my dad, who's a very conservative guy himself, I was really kind of surprised because he lives in a different state than I do. When I was visiting when you did the guest video on my channel, I was really surprised. He goes, I'm not fucking voting for Trump because I refuse to do it. He goes, I'm going to go vote, but I'll write in somebody else's name, but I am not going to do that. And then the last I had seen, he was actually considering voting for Gary Johnson, which is really crazy because I never thought my dad would ever pull the trigger for a guy that would advocate for marijuana legalization. But but I mean, that's really how far it's come. I mean, my dad would consider himself a Tea Party guy, and that's how bad they fucked up in this election, that they couldn't even put forth a decent enough candidate, that they can't even get people in their own base to even want to still come out and vote.
Yeah, it's just sad, isn't it?
I don't think that Bernie Sanders ever had a chance of getting the Democratic nomination. I think this always was going to be a Hillary thing just because of the way the political machine was going to move. This is just an absolute failure of Republican leadership to put forth any kind of an intriguing candidate. This should have been a fucking hands down cakewalk for them to win, but they fucked it up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so right. It's interesting to have this conversation with you because what I find generally is that people are either so pro-Trump or so anti-Trump that you don't get this sort of middle perspective. And you know, and I like I said, if push came to shove, if it was an Australian situation and I had to vote for one of these people, I'd probably vote for Trump, to be honest with you, just because he has some conservative kind of policies, at least on immigration, which I still don't totally agree with his immigration policy, but at least he's thinking about who should be led in the country. It's just such a awful choice. And I would say regroup Republicans and, I mean, okay, look, if you win, you win. But I don't think Trump's going to, because think of the flip side of what I just talked about, how Hillary would have to be the first, you know, she would have to preside over the next recession. Well, that's going to be Trump if Trump wins. And one of Trump's big platforms is that he's going to bring jobs back to America. Well, I'll tell you what, you're not bringing any jobs back to America in recession. You're going to lose jobs. That's just what happens in recessions. We just talked about how cycles happen. Trump is not going to be able to deliver on those things. And he's going to be, with his already high unpopularity, he's going to be an easy target. He'd be a one-termer. He'd be the first one-termer since Bush won. That's what you got to think about. And then does it do more damage to the Republican brand to lose now or in 4 years when Trump has not been he doesn't even have to be a disaster. He just has to be sort of mediocre, right? He just has to fail to deliver. Because I don't think he would be a disaster. I think that's way overblown. But because he'll have people around him, but he does. If he just fails to deliver on a couple of things and he presides over the next recession, you're done. And then is that worse than losing now and losing a proper conservative base? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, that's an interesting point too, and certainly with having the 2-term limits here with president, we do feel that sometimes that at least I feel, and other people I know feel, that there are certainly kind of sacrificial candidates that get put up sometimes. I kind of feel like John Kerry was that candidate back in 2004, because I think with the stuff that was going on with terrorism, I don't think the Democratic candidate really had a chance of beating George W. Bush. But I didn't really think of it that way. Maybe they allowed the self-aggrandizing hairpiece to run because they knew that maybe I mean, I'd like to think people are smart. Sometimes maybe they're just accidentally smart, but maybe this was the way of letting them fall on that sword to be taking the hit when the next downturn in the economy comes, because certainly the bubbles are coming more frequently and they're hollow recoveries, because like you said with the central banks, I mean, they're just playing a shell game with money. They're not helping to really remedy the situation. They're at best just trying to disguise it or maybe make it not hurt as much.
Well, it's funny how we've moved on with I don't know if you remember the phrase back in the financial crisis, which is pushing on a string, which is pointless. Now that was said a lot about Bernanke. Bernanke, man, he got the timing right. That guy walked away because we haven't seen the repercussions of all this quantitative easing. Now, the Federal Reserve's own branches have come out and done studies that said quantitative easing didn't do anything, didn't help economic growth at all. They've run the numbers. It didn't do anything for the economy. And you have a situation where these central banks, they don't have any levers to pull. I mean, they're sitting here debating yesterday over the employment number, whether Yellen's going to raise it a quarter point, from 0.25 to 0.5. I mean, it's a fucking joke, man. It's ridiculous. These people have no influence on the economy, and the financial markets commentators talk about them like what they do is meaningful. At this stage, it isn't. And the thing is, you've shit the bed in the meantime because you didn't get your fiscal house in order, which is what the government should be taking care of, fiscal policy. You haven't had tax reform. You haven't had, all kinds of reforms that you should have had. And the central banks haven't got anything to play with, so you're fucked. And it's the same across Europe, same here in Australia. Our interest rates are like 1.75%. So we got a little bit to play with, but it's the same situation.
Yeah, which makes it to me even more puzzling that a candidate like Bernie Sanders gained so much traction. It's like, does anybody and I'm guilty of it sometimes too, but it's like in America we just get so America-centric in the way we look at the world, and I pay attention, probably not as well as I should, but because I have an affinity for Europe. I kind of try to pay attention to what's going on over there. So I was watching some of the stuff at the European Union, and after seeing what was going on in like Greece and Italy, it was just like, you guys really think you can just try to take all this money and spread it around and pay for all this shit for all these people? It's like we've seen right now shining examples of how this doesn't fucking work.
Look at what is it, Venezuela? Look how that's playing out. I mean, do you want to see an example of how this works out? I mean, how many fucking examples does history throw up for you? But here's one happening in real time, and people want to say, "Oh no, that's not what we mean. We mean just a little tinkering here and a little tinkering there." And I was like, "Fuck, seriously?"
Yeah. That's the problem with trying to tinker and regulate things back to health, is you're always just that one tinkering or one regulation back to utopia, and it just you never get there.
It's insane. The idea, this like Sargon's idea, which I said in the video, like I agree with this diagnosis of a rising radical left, whether you want to call it communist, Trotskyist, collectivist, socialist, There's definitely a rise of people, as is exemplified by the Bernie Bros in the United States. We have it here in Australia. We have it. It's in the UK with Corbyn, and that. I don't disagree with this rise, and it is dangerous, and they are prepared to use violence, absolutely. But the idea that you're going to just give them something and they're going to be satisfied with that, that's not the way it has ever played out in history. I mean, can you ever think of a collectivist movement that went, trying to tear down the system and somebody said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to raise the bottom people's wages by about 10%, and we're going to take that from the top. Is that okay? And they go, yeah. Okay, let's go home. Take your pitchforks. We're going home now. We've got everything we need. It doesn't happen that way. I mean, it's extremely naive. They just want more and more and more and more. Okay, looking at you over there now, Sargon, you're earning too much money on YouTube. We're going to take a bit off the top of your wage. Oh, let's just cut it back to 100 grand. If you're earning over 100 grand, you're going to get some money confiscated. This is the way it goes. It doesn't just end because you throw them a bone. They want the whole fucking carcass.
Yeah. No, I was a little disappointed when I started becoming aware of Sargon's opinions like that. I was just kind of like, it's like now in your own way, you're almost just like these lefties, and you're trying to put your hand in somebody else's pocket, and it's like how is forcing financial change any different than trying to force cultural change that people don't want to do or is unnecessary? It's like I look at it as two sides of the same sword. It's like you're not allowing for individual freedom when you try to regulate and take money from people who are trying to create economy. They're trying to create jobs or income. I just don't understand that. I don't understand the lust for other people's money, or just plain the envy of the situation. It just seems people just get upset that other people have what they don't have, and they can't let go of that fact.
Yep. Yeah, the politics of envy. And yeah, you are exactly right, and Dave Cullen brought this up, is that they're acting like the people they oppose. Like, for example, Sargon, when it comes to feminism, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to freedom of speech issues, I mean, he's all over it. He's great. But then it's almost like the sort of Aaron Ra's of atheism, that they have this blind spot when it comes to feminism, right? They're unbelievably good at debunking religious bullshit, but feminism is like their kryptonite. And in this case, Sargon's excellent against the social justice stuff. When it comes to economics, it's like, dude, you're arguing. Do you realize you're arguing for the same type of thing? I mean, the argument basically boils down to this: it's not fair, right? It's not fair, which is a social justice thing. Life's not fair. That's right. Life isn't fucking fair. Get on with it. That's the answer. It's not, oh, okay, let's give you something. No. Life isn't fair. Get over it. Get on with it.
I always find that interesting when you're trying to talk to people about income redistribution, especially when it comes to doing it via taxes. And people always want to throw out there the social contract and how you're obligated to pay. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're obligated to pay a certain amount, so that way everyone else is taken care of and all these basic things that you say are necessary are covered, then okay, what percentage of someone's income then does it stop being their social obligation for existing and starts becoming stealing from them because you're taking in excess of what they should be responsible for? Nobody ever wants to put that percentage on it. I mean, if a guy if a guy's making $10 million, is it stealing from him if you're taking 15% of his income? If you're taking 50% of his income? If you're taking 75% of his income? But see, sometimes they don't look at it that way, though, because they're like, well, if you take 75% of his income, he still has $2.5 million, and that's so much money. Yeah, but you stole from him, though. I mean, did you really need to take $7.5 million of his $10 million?
Yeah, that's what's so sad in a place like the United States that we don't have we have a constitution, but we don't have a Bill of Rights. We don't have this sort of these founding fathers that preached individual liberty, right? That the majority couldn't run roughshod over the minority. This idea that you're free to pursue your own lot in life, free from government interference for the most part. But people now, and that's such a strong tradition in our country, but you see it fading, and it's sad. I mean, Australia doesn't necessarily have that tradition, but you guys do, and people are so willing just to trample all over it, right? Just because it's not fair. That's life.
Life's not fair. Buy a helmet. I don't know what to say.
Exactly. Yeah, it's appalling to watch. But I think this is an interesting dimension of the, if you want to call our community, skeptic community, the anti-social justice, the anti-feminist, the anti-censorship community, if that's what we are, that there is an interesting split. And I've noticed this for a while, but it just never comes to the fore because people don't talk about economics very much, do they? And that a lot of people that line up with us on all the social stuff, on all the social issues, are not with us on the sort of how to run economies and self-determination and free market capitalism being not a perfect system, but the best system there is. It's an interesting split in the community. And I think it's generally something that younger people, because I lent further left when I was younger, and you generally do. The old saying about if you don't lean left when you're young, you don't have a heart, and if you don't lean right when you're older, you don't have a brain. I mean, that's because it takes years of experience and being out there in the world to figure out these things. But it's a very interesting split in the community, I think, and I think it should be talked about more, and hopefully we can have reasonable discussions and make videos about it and try and understand and educate people, because I think in a lot of sense, a lot of the sort of collectivist sort of motivation to redistribute income is just a complete lack of historical context of why Western nations like the United States, like the UK, like Australia are successful in the first place. And that is because of free trade, competition, deregulation, all these kinds of things. Try and find prosperous countries elsewhere in the world that don't have these things. You can't find them. They don't exist. And the idea that prosperity comes from that, not from the welfare state. And the only way you get welfare states is being prosperous in the first place. That's the only way you get them.
Yeah, you have to have the access to start giving around before you can find yourself in those situations. That's for sure. Now, that is an interesting thing that doesn't get debated a lot in the community. I've been seeing a little bit of debate with I think like Tyler Preston and I want to say Edgy Sphinx. There was some people did a video about against anarcho-capitalists, which really in my heartest of hearts, that's really where my mind's at. Although I accept the modern constraints on such a system and why it's not possible in my lifetime, but I find it interesting. Some of the things that they attack them for are like trying to get everybody to nail down like exactly like how these things would necessarily work, instead of just focusing on the concept of individual liberty that really are more what I think anarcho-capitalists are trying to say, is that markets, when they're left to their own devices, that takes it takes away the ability for people to use the government as ways to influence these things, and puts the control in the hands of the people, because then you really have more of a direct vote when you're using your dollars rather than voting for somebody that's supposedly supposed to be looking out in your best interests. And I think that's what the more the message I wish people would take away from it is less than, instead of trying to work out all the ins and outs of what would happen if the government wasn't there, do consider how the government affects the market and why that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, market intervention is because the government doesn't trust people. Like, think about minimum wage laws. Well, I mean, of course, the intentions are always good, but like, they don't trust people to enter into voluntary arrangements. What is the old saying? Like, capitalism is like consensual sex, but communism is like, someone holding a gun to your fucking head. I mean, it literally is. I mean, it's that ability for you to go out and say, you know, I want $10 an hour for this job. And the guy goes, no, I'm only going to pay you $6. And you say, fuck off. And you walk down the street, you know, or you stand there and negotiate. You say, well, I'll work for $9. And he says, well, I can pay $8. How about $8.50? Done. You know, it's that. Like, why that the government knows better? They don't know better. They don't know better than you. Why are they better than you? Sure, people can get exploited, but that's a fucking life lesson too, right there. You know, this idea that the government knows better. Didn't Ronald Reagan say this? Didn't he say the 6 worst words you can hear is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help" or something like that?
Indeed.
Wasn't that a?
Yep.
I mean, that sums it all up. I mean, this. But we have, as I said, this generation who thinks the answer to everything is one more rule, one more regulation. Ban this thing, ban that thing. Let's stop that. Let's set up a government agency for that. How about just, hey guys, let's just stop for a minute. None of this is working too well. Why don't we wind all this shit back? Get rid of all these government agencies and regulations and shit. And by the way, here's another thing I think that why Sargon and Dave and myself, but more Sargon and Dave, were talking past each other. If you listen to the original stream, like Dave is talking about sort of benefits of free markets, and Sargon goes, so you're for child slaves. Yeah, like, he just leaps to that.
Oh,
and
God.
I think here, this is just a case of two people. When I say free market capitalism, I don't mean no regulations. I don't mean no rules. But I think Sargon thought that's what is meant by it when we say free market capitalism, because I call today capitalism and we have free markets, but they're not unregulated markets. And this goes back to, I'll give you another little economics history lesson for people who haven't heard this. Where does this idea of the free market come from? It comes from Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, The Invisible Hand. I mean, this book's what, 500 years old, something like that. And so, yeah, you'll get neocons quote that all day. But what they won't quote is the other book that he wrote, which is The Theory of Moral Sentiments. And in there, he basically says, and I'm paraphrasing hopelessly, but free markets left to their own devices will tend towards anarchy. He says that. Adam Smith, the father of all this shit, said quite clearly hundreds of years ago that you need regulation, you need rules. And so when we talk about these things, when I talk about free market capitalism, I'm not talking about unregulated capitalism with no rules. I want rules. There are people who, for example, think that insider trading on the stock market, you know what that is, right? Insider trading on non-public information. They think that should be legal. That should be fine because that fits with their free market fundamentalism. I'm totally against that. The stock market is fairly tightly regulated. There are problems with it, but it's very tightly regulated. And the idea that I'm for, look, if I can buy a child slave for a 6-year-old child slave because I can pay him $1 an hour. No, I'm not for that. I'm for rules and restrictions on doing that. So I think that's just an example of people talking on a topic and talking past each other.
It's not a useful thing to bring up like that anyway, because it ends up just being kind of a salacious sort of comment, because it's like, well, no, it's like, of course, a reasonable person doesn't want to advocate for child labor. It's like, but let's look at history, though. It's like child labor is as old as man. Why don't we have child labor anymore? Oh, it's because we were able to grow things to the point where that's not any longer a necessity. We're able to move past that, and and I'm with you on that too. You know, even knowing that I'm a like I said, at heart, an anarcho-capitalist. It's like that doesn't not having rulers doesn't mean no rules. I would just maybe say I don't want the government being the one that's making the control over regulation, but that's not to say that, like, say, I don't want oil companies to establish standards of operation and be like, hey, this is how we need to operate to ensure, or have watchdog groups that look over this and make advice to say, hey, these are the ways that you should operate in order to consider, these effects that you can have on things. But it's like, but what's the sense in that that conversation though, to say it's like, well, I advocate for free markets. What, you want children to have to work in a factory? Well, of course not. Come on, that's not what we're saying here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I think that's a problem when people talk about things, as we often do. Let's face it. I mean, streams like this, we talk about things that we're not familiar with. We step out of our sphere of competence, if you like Sargon. I mean, Sargon readily admitted, I'm not interested in economics. I don't know much about it. He was very upfront about that. But that's what happens when you do that, is that you're going to end up just talking past one another because you don't even agree on basic sort of definitions of what free market capitalism means, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God, I can't remember the quote exactly, but or who said it, but I'll kind of paraphrase it. But it was basically talking about how the economics are such a boring and dull subject matter, which is why a good number of people in life will always remain willfully ignorant of what it really is.
Right. Which is unfortunate because it's important. Because
I mean,
when
even
someone's trying to sell you,
even I have a really hard time with it, wrapping my head around it sometimes. And really, my big saving factor in is I have a cousin that is extremely interested in the markets, and sometimes for me, being that I'm not as learned as some people or college education, sometimes I really need things broken down into a lot more simplistic terms. That way I can kind of have like a little bit more of a layman's look or a 30,000 foot view look at what's going on. And he kind of sometimes sums up things for me, or at least ties things together in a way where all of a sudden I'll have like that aha kind of a moment. Whereas if I just read the stuff on my own, it really does kind of become, mind-numbingly boring kind of stuff, almost like reading a stereo manual.
yeah, well, that's the difference between, I mean, and there's always a danger in just talking to people who have academic smarts and no real world experience too, live in ivory towers, and everything's a spreadsheet to them. But yeah, having that real life experience and then being able to bounce it off someone who has the theoretical background, I mean, that's important for these kind of conversations. It's just so unfortunate that, if we could get people's head around the fact that, yeah, life's not fair. Sometimes it's tough. Some people are born into advantage. Some people aren't. You have to make the most of what you do. And when the government tries to get involved to make things quote unquote fairer or more equal, they usually fuck it up. Almost always fuck it up, right? That's the problem. They come to you with these solutions that sound wonderful. Everybody's going to get paid the same, or, it's like, but generally what happens is, to make something equal for somebody else, you have to take it away from someone else, or you have to restrict somebody else's freedom. And if you believe, like you said, because you know this better than me, at being an American, that if you stick to that principle first, which is, I think, what libertarians do, right? Mm-hmm. This concept of individual liberty and your pursuit of freedom and self-determination, that's first and foremost should be the first consideration, not restricting anybody's freedom. Because I can't understand the moral argument that, you're morally obliged to help the poor people, but you're going to ignore the immorality of holding a gun to somebody's head and demanding that they do help some person who's either really or only perceived to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah. And then it's always interesting when they make that or refuse to make that moral connection, because it's always, like I was saying earlier, it's always thrown back to the social contract. Well, that's the price we pay for living in society. It's like, well, that's fine if you want to justify it that way, but don't say it's not violence or theft to take and what money is. And people don't think of it this way a lot of times, but what that is it's a numerical representation of your labor unit. So I don't see much of a difference between forcibly taking 15 or 20 or 50% of my income and sticking a gun in my face and telling me go in that field and pick that plant or whatever, you know, other duty you assign for me to do. To me, it's one and the same. And
I think it sounds like an exaggeration to some people to say that a government enforced, you know, mechanism like redistributing income or taxation, whatever, is done to you at the point of a gun. But it is, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that you'll be shot, but you could be hauled off, fined, and imprisoned if you don't do it, right? I mean, there's a threat at the end of it every single time. That's right, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, and that's really the thing of it is, you know, it's like whether you want to justify that or not, you know, that's what it is at the end of the day. And I've seen people engage in all kinds of different mental gymnastics to try to, you know, to justify the social contract and why this is acceptable, and it's a trade-off. And, you know, like I said earlier, it's like, but then when you push them on it more, it's like, well, at what point does it stop being the price you pay for trying to have to be in society, and when it starts becoming an excess just so other people can have something that they want, that they didn't actually earn themselves. And you know, you end up in this kind of a weird situation where in doing so, it's like you're trying to almost force your morality on other people and trying to guarantee equal outcomes, when guaranteeing equal outcome is really the true utopian thing. Is you just cannot guarantee equal outcome. The most that we can ever do is guarantee an equal opportunity, and you know, and that we don't have anything that stops anybody from pursuing opportunity. But it's like, unfortunately, people are going to be born into a different starting point in life. People are going to have a variety of different things that affect them in life, and because we can't account for all of those things, we're just never going to be able to make it right for everybody. And I'm really
go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I'm gonna say I'm really a big believer that that people that are I believe there are enough good people in the world that I think the good people that are really truly worthy of being helped are going to be helped and taken care of. I also think you have the right to fail if you want to be lazy and you don't want to participate in society, and you think that society is just going to take money from you. It'll be, or I know it'll sound callous, and some people hate it when I say things like this, but I also think you have the right to die. You have the right to starve to death. It's like, that's a choice that you can make. I'm under no obligation to make sure you eat because you don't feel like working. And there are some people, and I'm not saying every poor person doesn't want to work, but there are a percentage of people in these situations that have no motivation to work. They don't want to work. They don't want to put forth the effort. Well, I'm sorry, if the most you can aspire to do is to work at McDonald's and call in sick 15 times a year, and then I'm not going to be the one that's going to be obligated to make sure you're paid $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, you know, what you described is perfectly the thing that we're all supposed to be fighting against, which is this social justice authoritarians that want to tell you, like, what did you say? Imposing their morality. Exactly. I mean, that's why can't they get that this is the same argument they make against feminists or social justice warriors or people who want to tell you that you have white privilege and that minorities should be preferred over everybody else, and that you should walk around feeling guilty just because you're white. All these kinds of people. This argument is an imposition of their moral stance, which has no foundation. And yet, when we go over to the economic realm, they don't seem to be able to apply the same reasoning.
No, that's very true. It's like, you know, it's the bleeding heart thing. It's like, oh, I feel so bad for people. Well, I feel bad for people too. It's like, please don't mistake anything that I say as being callous towards humans. It just or other individuals. It's just the fact of the matter is there's 7 billion people on the planet. It was a Bob Dylan video I watched from a really long time ago when he was over in Britain in the 60s. It was called I think Don't Look Back. But the guy was asking him a question. He goes, well, what do you think when you meet someone on the street? He's like, well, I don't like him. He goes, what do you mean you don't like him? He goes, well, I don't want to know anybody. He goes, there's billions of people on the planet. I can't care about everyone. He goes, well, what if you could get something from somebody or learn something from somebody? He goes, well, now there's the thing. He goes, you only want to know somebody because you think there's something that you can get from them out of it. He goes, I don't want to know anybody because there's nothing I want from someone.
Right.
And it was kind of, you know, him being a young flippant little asshole in a way, but there was a little bit of truth in that nugget though, that he dropped there, and that was just, you know, the concept of, you know, it's like a lot of people want something from somebody else because it's to their own benefit. So you want to other people to pay for other people to do better because it makes you feel good to know that they're taken care of. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't you go out and aspire to earn $3.5 million a year, and then you feel free to give away 75% of your income if that's what you think the right thing to do is.
Exactly.
I bet
You're
you
welcome
won't
to
do
do
that, but you go do that.
I'm not gonna stand in your way. Go ahead. I will stand on the sidelines and applaud you. Just don't tell me that I have to do it because you feel bad. Right? That's the thing. It all comes back to freedom. Don't tell me, you go ahead and do whatever you like with your money, but don't tell me I have to do the same thing based on your morality, which could just be based on the fact that you have some kind of guilt because of your own privilege. It's often, because that's often the problem. I mean, working class people like I come from, I don't have this guilt problem. I don't have some middle class guilt because I was not born into the middle class. I didn't get a free college education. I paid for it all myself, paid for it as I went. I had to take loans out, paid it all back. So I don't feel some guilt that I need to make reparations for. I believe everyone should do what I did. Just make the most of what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I did a video a long time ago when I was a little bit newer of a channel. It was about BuzzFeed and teacher demonstrating privilege by like where kids were sat in a classroom and throwing like paper balls into a waste can or something, and you know, privilege is sitting closer to the waste basket. And you know, my point to it is like, well, you know, of course we're not all going to have the same starting position. It's just my question to the individual is well, what did you do when you were sitting in the back of the class and you made your best effort to throw the ball and you missed? Did you give up and said, oh fuck it, I'm never going to make it into the basket? Or did you wad up another piece of paper and try to take another shot? Did you do something to try to move your position and put yourself in a better position to have a better angle or a better distance to hit the waste basket? It's like, that's the real question in life is how people face the adversity and overcome it. I mean, I've certainly had my own fair share of hard times. I've had to look to family and friends for help at points in time when it happens. But the point is though, is like, you know, never during any of those times was I looking for somebody's handout. Never during any of those times was I, you know, oh, poor me, you know, why is this happening to me? You know, how am I, you know, somebody's got to help me take care of this. Is like, no, you just, sometimes no matter how much it sucks, you really got to buckle down and try to find a solution to the problem rather than having your own pity party. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you can drown yourself in your own tears, but you know, it's not going to make you float.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I think I'm going to have to steal that. Oh, well, dude, I think we've been going for what? Nearly 2 3/4.
Yeah, and you got stuff to do.
So, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm going to go watch my little cousin play football today, so that'll be good. It's a semi-final, and if they win this, they get into the big one. So it's good to go down, and it's good to get out from behind this fucking computer and go out and interact with regular people.
Oh, for sure. I spend way too much time doing this nowadays. It seems like all my free time is on YouTube, and I got out for a minute last night and had a couple of drinks with some buddies, so that was kind of nice to do some non-YouTubing for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I will. You're going to post this on your channel. I'll download it and post. I might even cut it up into pieces and put it up on mine, and just so everybody knows who you are. And I can, if people listen to this, because I'm going to direct them to that, and they should subscribe to you and your channel because you put out some really good content. And go over and when he has time. You had a bit of downtime there for a while, didn't you? But you're back, and go and check us out. We're both on Minds as well. That's worth mentioning, isn't it? We're both over there. So go over to Minds, check out Minds. Eventually, hopefully, it's going to take a while. I guess it's something we didn't talk about, but Minds is a work in process, and it's not a solution for all your problems right now when it comes to free speech. But I think this is a natural reaction to all the censorship that's going on, and get behind it. Go over there and interact and see what's going on. I think you'll find a lot of your favorite YouTubers are over there already.
Indeed, there's quite a few of them.
Yeah. All right, dude. Thanks a lot for having me. That was fun.
All right, thanks for being on and being the inaugural stream guest.
Good one, man. Just stay on after a second. We'll have a little bit of chat once you close it off.
All right, sounds good. All right, bye everybody.
Yeah.